The dead do not always rest. Right now, as you watch this, someone somewhere is seeing a ghost, a translucent figure in a hallway, a voice calling from an empty room, the unmistakable presence of someone who should not be there, because they are dead. This is happening in Tokyo, in Lagos, in London, in Los Angeles, in every city on Earth, across every culture that has ever existed, throughout all of human history. We have always believed in ghosts. The ancient Sumerians believed, the Egyptians believed, the Greeks and Romans believed, medieval Christians believed. Modern scientists who should know better still believe. Your ancestors believed. And whether you admit it or not, some part of you believes too. Because we have all felt it. That chill when entering certain rooms. That certainty of being watched when alone. That moment you could swear you saw your deceased grandmother standing in the kitchen, just for a heartbeat, before she vanished. That dream where your dead father spoke to you, and it felt nothing like a dream. We dismiss these experiences. We rationalize them. We call them imagination, grief, coincidence, trick of the light. But they keep happening to millions of people, across all cultures, across all time. The same experiences, reported again and again, in every language humans have ever spoken. Why? This is not a ghost hunting show. I will not take you to abandoned asylums with night vision cameras. I will not show you obviously fake spirit photographs or stage seances for your entertainment. This is not that kind of documentary. This is something much more ambitious, much more profound, and much more disturbing. This is the complete history of ghosts. Every culture, every continent, every belief system, comprehensive documentation of humanity's oldest conviction, that death is not the end. We will travel from ancient Mesopotamia 4,000 years ago, where the first ghost story was written on clay tablets, to modern Japan, where millions still perform rituals for restless spirits. From the purgatorial ghosts of medieval Catholicism to the ancestor spirits of traditional Africa. From the jinn of Islamic theology to the hungry ghosts of Buddhist cosmology. From Victorian seances attempting to photograph the dead to modern neuroscience explaining why our brains create ghosts. We will examine every major ghost tradition humans have developed. We will explore what ghosts are believed to be, why they linger, how they manifest, what they want, how cultures deal with them, and most importantly, why we believe in them. Because that is the real mystery. Not whether ghosts objectively exist, but why billions of humans across thousands of years have been convinced they do. Every culture has ghost stories. Every religion has theology explaining spirits. Every society has rituals for the dead. This universality demands explanation. Either ghosts are real and humans everywhere have discovered the same truth, or ghosts fulfill some deep psychological need so fundamental that every culture independently invents them. Either possibility is fascinating and disturbing. Before we begin, 3 things you should know. First, this documentary contains no fabrications. Every ghost belief, every ritual, every theological explanation you will hear is historically and anthropologically verified. I present culture's beliefs about ghosts accurately and respectfully, without judgment, regardless of whether I personally find them credible. This is documentation, not invention. Second, this documentary is exhaustive. 14 chapters covering every major ghost tradition across all continents and time periods. If you watch this entire documentary, you will know more about ghost beliefs than 99% of humans who have ever lived. You will understand the complete spectrum of how humanity relates to death and what might follow it. This is the most comprehensive treatment of ghost beliefs ever produced for any medium. Third, this documentary will change how you think about death. By the end, You will understand ghosts not as supernatural phenomena to be proven or disproven, but as windows into human consciousness, culture, and our eternal struggle with mortality. You will see that ghost beliefs reveal fundamental truths about psychology, anthropology, and what it means to be human. And you might find yourself believing in ghosts, not because I convinced you, but because after examining how every culture in human history has reported the same experiences, the same encounters, the same persistent presence of the dead, you will struggle to dismiss it all as delusion. Now you might be wondering, is this worth my time? Here's why it is. You are going to die. Everyone you love is going to die. This is the one absolute certainty of human existence. Death is coming for all of us. And when it comes, what happens? Do we simply cease, or does something persist? Every religion offers an answer. Every culture has traditions. But most people never systematically examine what humans actually believe happens after death. This documentary does that. By examining ghost beliefs across all cultures, we are really examining humanity's attempts to understand death itself. To answer the oldest question, what happens when we die? You might learn something that comforts you. You might learn something that terrifies you, but you will learn something true about the human experience of mortality. And that knowledge is worth your time. If you're still not convinced, let me make you an offer. Watch the first chapter on ancient Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Greek, and Roman ghost beliefs. The foundation of Western ghost traditions, the first ghost stories ever written. If you're not fascinated, if you're not curious what comes next, you can stop. But I don't think you will stop. Because these stories, these beliefs, these attempts to understand what survives death, they are humanity at its most vulnerable and most profound. And once you begin this journey, you will want to complete it. Before we travel to ancient Mesopotamia and read humanity's first ghost story, I need to ask something of you. If you find this documentary valuable, if you learn something, if you appreciate the hundreds of hours of research that went into creating the most comprehensive documentation of ghost beliefs ever produced, please subscribe to this channel. This is Mr. Ravenhurst. I create long-form historical documentaries about humanity's darkest and most profound beliefs. You've already seen my documentary on the complete history of hell, my documentary on cursed places, my work on demonology. This channel exists to document the aspects of human belief most people never examine systematically. Subscribing helps me create more documentaries like this one. It tells YouTube this content matters. It allows me to continue researching and producing comprehensive treatments of subjects that deserve serious attention. If you watch this entire documentary and find it valuable, please consider subscribing. That's all I ask. Also, leave a comment telling me which culture's ghost beliefs you found most fascinating. I read every comment. Your engagement helps determine what I research next. The community around this channel is thoughtful, curious, and engaged with ideas. Join us and share this documentary. When your friends ask what you're watching, tell them, a documentary about ghosts that's actually about death, memory, and what it means to be human. They'll think you're insane. Then they'll watch it too. One final thing before we begin. Turn off the lights. Use headphones if possible. Give this documentary your full attention. This is not background content. This is not something to play while doing other tasks. This requires focus, immersion, the willingness to engage seriously with profound questions about consciousness, death, and the possibility that something survives. You are about to examine every major ghost tradition in human history. You are about to explore belief systems from ancient Mesopotamia to modern Japan. You are about to confront the oldest question humans have ever asked. What happens when we die? Ready? The dead do not always rest. Let's find out why. We begin where civilization began, in the ancient Near East. in Mesopotamia, 4,000 years ago, where the first ghost story in human history was written on clay tablets, the Epic of Gilgamesh, Tablet 12. The first time a human being wrote down an encounter with a ghost. Let's see what it says. Chapter 1. Ancient Ghosts, Mesopotamia to Rome. The oldest ghost story ever written comes from ancient Mesopotamia, from the Epic of Gilgamesh, composed around 2100 BCE in Sumerian, later translated to Akkadian. In Tablet 12, Gilgamesh's friend Enkidu dies and descends to the underworld. Gilgamesh begs the gods to allow him to see his friend one more time. The earth opens. Enkidu's ghost rises like a wind and embraces Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh asks what the underworld is like. Enkidu describes it: the house where those who enter do not leave, the road that goes but does not return, the house where the inhabitants are bereft of light, where dust is their sustenance and clay their food. This is the first detailed description of a ghost in written literature, 4,000 years old, and already the themes are familiar: the dead existing in shadow realm, longing to communicate with the living, describing their grim circumstances. The ancient Mesopotamians had elaborate ghost theology. When a person died, their physical body decayed, but their etemu, their spirit, descended to the underworld called Irkala, or Kur. This was a dark, dusty realm beneath the earth, ruled by the goddess Ereshkigal. The underworld was not punishment or reward. It was simply where the dead existed. Rich and poor, good and evil, all went to the same place. The dead ate dust and clay. They wore feathers like birds. They existed in perpetual gloom. But the dead were not entirely cut off from the living world. Under certain circumstances, ghosts could return. Most commonly, they returned when the living failed to provide proper offerings. The Mesopotamians believed the dead required regular food and drink offerings from their descendants. Without these offerings, the dead starved in the underworld. Starving ghosts became angry. They could leave the underworld and haunt the living. These returning ghosts were dangerous. They caused illness, nightmares, and madness. They particularly targeted their own descendants who had failed to make offerings. The solution was to perform the proper rituals, provide the required offerings, and speak the ghost name aloud to acknowledge them. Once appeased, the ghost would return to the underworld. The Mesopotamians also believed ghosts could return if they died improperly. Those who died violent deaths, who drowned, who were murdered, who died in childbirth, who were not buried with proper rites, these dead became restless ghosts. They wandered the earth, unable to enter the underworld. These ghosts were especially dangerous because they were confused, angry, and lost. Mesopotamian texts describe elaborate exorcism rituals to remove haunting ghosts. Priests would identify which ghost was causing problems, determine what the ghost needed, provide appropriate offerings, and speak incantations commanding the ghost to depart. The rituals worked not by destroying the ghost, but by satisfying its needs so it would willingly return to the underworld. This pattern, ghosts as dead who require something from the living, appears in ghost beliefs worldwide. The Mesopotamians established the template 4,000 years ago. Ancient Egypt had different ghost theology. The Egyptians believed humans consisted of multiple parts: the physical body, the ka, the ba, and other spiritual components. After death, the body was mummified to preserve it. The ka, a person's life force, remained with the body and required food offerings. The ba, the personality or soul, could travel between the tomb and the afterlife. The ideal afterlife in Egyptian belief was the field of reeds, a paradise where the dead lived eternally in perfect conditions. But reaching the field of reeds required passing judgment before Osiris. The heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, representing truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the person entered paradise. If heavier, the heart was devoured by Amit, and the person ceased to exist. But not all dead reached this judgment. Those who died improperly, whose bodies were not preserved, who lacked proper burial, became restless spirits. These spirits could haunt the living. Egyptian texts describe letters to the dead, where living people wrote messages on pottery bowls placed in tombs, asking deceased relatives to stop haunting them or to help with problems among the living. One famous letter reads, "What have I done against you that I should have come into this wretched state? What have I done against you? But what you have done is to have laid hands on me, although I had done nothing against you." The living person is complaining to a dead relative whose ghost is apparently causing problems. The Egyptians also feared the Ak, spirits of the dead who had become powerful and dangerous. These were not ordinary ghosts, but spiritually potent dead who could harm the living from beyond. Protection required amulets, spells, and priestly intervention. Egyptian tomb texts are filled with spells to prevent the dead from being disturbed, to protect the deceased from dangers in the afterlife, and to ensure the dead could travel between tomb and paradise without becoming lost. The entire elaborate funerary system existed partly to prevent the creation of restless ghosts. Ancient Greece had rich ghost traditions. The Greeks believed in Hades, the underworld ruled by the god of the same name. The dead existed there as shades, pale shadow versions of their living selves. They retained some memory and personality, but were diminished, without the vitality of life. Greek ghosts could return to the living world for various reasons. Homer's Odyssey includes a famous scene where Odysseus travels to the edge of Hades and speaks with the shades of the dead. He pours libations of blood, which temporarily strengthens the ghosts and allows them to speak. The ghost of his mother appears. The ghost of the prophet Tiresias provides guidance. The ghost of Achilles laments his death, saying he would rather be a living slave than a dead king. This scene establishes Greek ghost theology. The dead exist in shadow form in Hades. They can communicate with the living through ritual. They require offerings to gain temporary strength, and they generally regret death and long for life. Greek literature is filled with ghost stories. In Aeschylus's play The Persians, the ghost of King Darius appears to warn his people. In Euripides' Hecuba, the ghost of Polydorus appears to his mother. These ghosts appear for specific purposes, to deliver warnings, to demand justice, to reveal hidden information. The Greeks also believed in various categories of dangerous dead. The Aoroi were those who died young before their time. These dead were angry and dangerous, particularly likely to become malevolent ghosts. The Biaithanatoi were those who died violently. They too were prone to haunting. The Ataphoi were those denied proper burial. Without burial rites, they could not enter Hades properly and became wandering ghosts. Greek magical texts describe elaborate rituals to control or banish ghosts. The Greek magical papyri, dating from the 2nd century BCE to the 5th century CE, include numerous ghost-related spells. Some spells summon ghosts to answer questions. Others compel ghosts to perform tasks. Still others banish unwanted haunting. One spell reads, "I conjure you, dead spirit, by the necessity of the infernal regions, that you obey me and that you send the demon to the one I name." This spell attempts to command a ghost to send a demon to afflict someone. Greek magic used ghosts as intermediaries between the living and spiritual powers. The Greeks also practiced necromancy, divination through communication with the dead. Certain locations called nekouomenteion served as oracle sites where people could communicate with the dead. The most famous was at Ephyra in northwestern Greece. Visitors underwent purification rituals, descended into underground chambers designed to represent the underworld, and received messages from the dead through priestly intermediaries. Ancient Rome inherited Greek ghost traditions, but added their own elements. The Romans believed in various categories of spirits associated with the dead. The mains were the spirits of ancestors, generally benevolent and deserving of respect and offerings. The larvae were malevolent ghosts of the evil dead, who returned to harm the living. The lemures were dangerous spirits of the dead, who haunted households. The Romans held annual festivals to appease these spirits. The Parentalia in February honored deceased family members. The Feralia ended the Parentalia with public ceremonies for all the dead. The Lemuria in May specifically appeased the lemures, the dangerous household ghosts. During the Lemuria, the head of each household performed a ritual at midnight. He walked through the house barefoot, made a fig sign with his hand to ward off evil, threw black beans over his shoulder, and said 9 times, "These I send, with these beans I redeem me and mine." The ghosts were believed to follow behind, gathering the beans. The man then washed his hands, clashed bronze vessels, and said 9 times, "Ghosts of my fathers, go forth." The ghosts departed until the next year. This ritual reveals Roman ghost beliefs. Ghosts were real presences that required regular appeasement. They could be controlled through specific actions, and they were connected to family and household rather than random haunting. Roman literature includes famous ghost stories. Pliny the Younger, writing around 100 CE, describes a haunted house in Athens. The house was cheap because it was known to be haunted. A philosopher named Athenodorus rented it anyway. That night, he heard chains rattling. A ghost appeared. An emaciated old man with long beard, shackled in chains. The ghost beckoned. Athenodorus followed the ghost into the courtyard, where the ghost vanished. Athenodorus marked the spot. The next day, authorities dug at that location. They found a skeleton in chains. The bones were given proper burial. The ghost never appeared again. This story establishes a pattern that would dominate Western ghost beliefs for 2,000 years. Ghosts appear because something is wrong. They lead the living to discover their remains or the cause of their death, and proper burial ends the haunting. This narrative structure appears in ghost stories across cultures and centuries. Pliny's account is significant because he presents it as factual. He vouches for the story's truth. He is not writing fiction, but reporting an actual event. This makes it one of the earliest recorded paranormal investigations in Western literature. The Romans also believed ghosts could be deliberately summoned. Lucan's Pharsalia, written in the 1st century CE, includes a scene where the witch Erycto summons a ghost to prophesy. She finds a corpse on a battlefield, drags it to a cave, and performs a ritual involving blood, herbs, and incantations. The corpse reanimates, and the ghost speaks through it, revealing the future. After delivering the prophecy, Erycto must burn the body to ensure the ghost does not escape to haunt others. This scene reflects Roman beliefs about necromancy. The dead possessed knowledge the living lacked. They could be compelled to share that knowledge through magic, and controlling them required expertise and power. Necromancy was dangerous, but possible. The ancient world established ghost beliefs that would persist for millennia. The dead continue to exist in another realm. They can sometimes return to the living world. They require proper burial and offerings to rest peacefully. They possess knowledge about the future or hidden things. They can be summoned or banished through ritual, and certain categories of dead are more likely to become troublesome ghosts. These beliefs did not emerge from a single source but developed independently across multiple civilizations. Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece and Rome had different theologies, different afterlife beliefs, and different religious systems, yet all developed similar ghost concepts. This suggests ghost beliefs reflect something fundamental about human psychology and how we process death. The pattern continues beyond the ancient Mediterranean. In ancient China, ancestor veneration dominated religious life. The Chinese believed the dead required regular offerings from their descendants. Without these offerings, ancestors became hungry ghosts who returned to plague the living. Chinese ghost festivals allowed offerings to appease these spirits and prevent haunting. In ancient India, Hindu and Buddhist texts describe various types of spirits. Pretas were hungry ghosts suffering from unsatisfied desires. Bhutas were ghosts of those who died violently or improperly. These spirits haunted the living until their spiritual needs were met. Ancient Indian texts describe elaborate rituals for feeding hungry ghosts and ensuring the dead transitioned properly to their next incarnation. In pre-Columbian Americas, cultures from the Maya to the Inca believed in spirits of the dead who could interact with the living. The Aztecs believed the dead went to different afterlife realms depending on how they died. But they also believed the dead could return during specific festivals, requiring offerings and acknowledgement from the living. Across all these civilizations, separated by thousands of miles and developing independently, the same pattern emerges. Humans believe the dead persist in some form. They sometimes return to the living world, and they require specific treatment from the living to prevent problems. The ancient world established the foundation for all subsequent ghost beliefs. The categories of ghosts, the reasons they haunt, the methods to appease or banish them, all of this was developed in the ancient world and transmitted through centuries to the present day. Medieval Europe would build on these foundations, adding Christian theology to create an elaborate system explaining exactly what ghosts were, where they came from, and what their appearance meant. But the basic structure was already present in ancient Mesopotamia 4,000 years ago. Chapter 2: Medieval European Ghosts and the Theology of Spirits. Medieval Europe created the most elaborate ghost theology in human history. The medieval church spent centuries debating, defining, and systematizing exactly what ghosts were, where they came from, and what they meant. This theological project was necessary because Christianity faced a paradox regarding ghosts. On one hand, the Bible contained ghost stories. The Witch of Endor summoned the ghost of Samuel for King Saul. Jesus himself appeared as a ghost after his resurrection. The disciples thought he was a spirit until he showed his wounds and ate fish to prove his physical reality. The early church accepted that spirits of the dead could appear to the living. On the other hand, Christian theology taught that after death, souls went immediately to heaven, hell, or later developed concept of purgatory. If souls were already in their eternal destinations, how could they return to earth as ghosts? What were ghosts, if not souls of the dead? Medieval theologians spent centuries wrestling with this question. The answers they developed shaped European ghost beliefs for over 1,000 years and continue to influence modern ghost concepts. The early medieval period, from roughly 500 to 1000 CE, inherited Roman ghost beliefs but struggled to reconcile them with Christianity. Augustine of Hippo, writing in the early 5th century, addressed the question of ghosts. He acknowledged that people reported seeing dead relatives appear to them, but he argued these appearances were not actually the souls of the dead. The dead were in heaven or hell and could not leave. The appearances were either angels taking the form of the deceased to deliver messages, or demons impersonating the dead to deceive the living. This became the official church position for centuries. Ghosts were not real. Apparent ghosts were either divine messengers or demonic deception. To believe you were seeing the actual soul of a dead person was to misunderstand Christian theology. But this official position conflicted with popular belief and lived experience. People continued reporting encounters with deceased relatives. They continued experiencing phenomena they interpreted as ghosts. The Church's insistence that these were angels or demons did not match how people understood their experiences. By the High Medieval period, around the 12th century, theology began to shift. The concept of purgatory became fully developed. Purgatory was a temporary realm where souls underwent purification before entering heaven. Those who died in a state of grace, but still carrying venial sins, had to be cleansed in purgatory before they could see God. The length of time in purgatory depended on the severity and number of sins. This could be days or centuries. Purgatory solved the ghost problem. If souls in purgatory were not yet in their final destination, they might be permitted to return to earth temporarily. They would do so for specific reasons: to request prayers and masses from the living, which could shorten their time in purgatory; to deliver warnings to the living about sin and judgment; to reveal hidden information; or to fulfill vows they could not complete before death. This theology made ghosts doctrinally acceptable. Ghosts became souls from purgatory granted temporary permission by God to appear to the living. They were not demons. They were not angels. They were actual souls of the dead, suffering in purgatory, seeking help from the living. This belief is documented extensively in medieval texts. Gregory the Great's dialogues, written around 590, contains numerous ghost stories. In one account, a monk who died appeared to a brother and explained he was being purified by fire for minor sins. He asked for prayers and masses. After 30 masses were said, the ghost appeared again to say he had been released from purgatory and entered heaven. This story establishes the medieval ghost narrative. Ghosts appear from purgatory. They are recognizable as specific deceased individuals. They request specific actions from the living, usually prayers or masses, and proper response from the living ends the haunting by helping the soul progress. Medieval chronicles are filled with ghost accounts. The 12th century chronicler William of Newburgh recorded dozens of ghost stories. One account describes a man who died and was buried, but returned as a reanimated corpse that wandered the streets at night. The village was terrified. The body was exhumed, found to be uncorrupted, and burned. Only after burning did the haunting end. This account reflects beliefs that merged Christian theology with older folk traditions. The corpse reanimating and walking is not standard Christian ghost theology. It resembles earlier pagan beliefs about undead, but William records it alongside more orthodox accounts of souls from purgatory, showing how multiple ghost traditions coexisted in medieval Europe. The Church attempted to regulate ghost beliefs. Church councils issued statements about what types of ghost encounters were possible and which were demonic deception. Theologians wrote treatises distinguishing true apparitions from purgatory from false apparitions from demons. Thomas Aquinas, the 13th century theologian, addressed ghosts in his Summa Theologica. He argued that souls in purgatory or hell could not leave on their own will. However, God could permit souls to appear to the living for divine purposes. These appearances serve to strengthen faith, encourage prayer for the dead, and remind the living of judgment and mortality. Aquinas emphasized that such apparitions were rare and required divine permission. Most reported ghost sightings were probably natural phenomena, misinterpreted or demonic deception. This position became standard Catholic theology. Ghosts were possible but rare. They came from purgatory with God's permission. They appeared for edifying purposes. Any ghost encounter needed to be carefully evaluated to ensure it was not demonic. Medieval ghost stories reflect this theology. The ghosts typically appear to living relatives or friends. They explain they are suffering in purgatory. They describe their torments, which serve as warnings about the seriousness of sin. They request specific numbers of masses or prayers. Often they appear multiple times, thanking the living for their help and eventually reporting their release to heaven. These stories served important functions in medieval society. They reinforced belief in purgatory and the efficacy of prayers for the dead. They encouraged people to have masses said for deceased relatives. They reminded everyone that death was not the end, and that one's fate in the afterlife depended on behavior in life. They maintained connection between living and dead, making death less absolute. But not all medieval ghosts were souls from purgatory. Folk belief contained many other types of spirits. The wild hunt was a ghostly procession that rode through the sky on certain nights, led by a divine or demonic figure. Those who saw the wild hunt were doomed. The wild hunt represented the dangerous dead, those who died violently or without rights, forever condemned to ride with the spectral host. Revenants were corpses that returned from the grave to haunt the living. Unlike ghosts, which were incorporeal spirits, revenants were the actual physical dead bodies, reanimated and dangerous. Medieval chronicles describe numerous cases of revenants being exhumed and destroyed through staking, beheading, or burning. These accounts are difficult to interpret. Some may reflect actual exhumations of corpses that had not fully decomposed, creating impression of undeath. Others may be purely legendary. But the belief in revenants was widespread in medieval Europe. Banshees in Celtic tradition were female spirits who wailed to announce coming death. They were not ghosts of the human dead, but rather supernatural beings connected to certain families. When someone in the family was about to die, the banshee would wail. This belief persisted in Ireland and Scotland for centuries and still appears in folklore today. Poltergeists, though the term is German and comes later, were recognized in medieval accounts. These were spirits that moved objects, made noises, and caused disturbances without being seen. Medieval chroniclers attributed these phenomena to demons or mischievous spirits, rather than ghosts of the dead. The poltergeist represented a different category of supernatural occurrence. Medieval ghost beliefs varied significantly by region and social class. Scholarly theology emphasized purgatorial ghosts with divine permission. But peasant folklore contained a much wider range of spirits: fairies, elves, trolls, nature spirits, and various categories of the dead. The church attempted to suppress these beliefs as pagan superstition, but they persisted, creating a complex mix of official theology and folk belief. The relationship between living and dead in medieval Europe was intimate and ongoing. The dead were buried in churchyards, literally surrounding the living during worship. Prayers for the dead were central to religious practice. Guilds and confraternities existed specifically to ensure members received proper burial and had masses said for their souls. The cult of relics meant that bones of saints were preserved, venerated, and believed to work miracles. The boundary between living and dead was permeable. This permeability extended to ghost beliefs. The dead were not distant. They were in purgatory, which was understood as a real place, temporarily experiencing purification. They could communicate with the living through dreams, visions, and apparitions. The living could help the dead through prayers, masses, and good works. This created a reciprocal relationship. The living helped the dead advance in purgatory, and the dead interceded with God for the living. Medieval ghost stories often emphasize this reciprocity. A ghost appears requesting help. The living person provides that help. The ghost returns to express gratitude and offers to pray for the living person from heaven. This exchange benefits both parties and maintains familial and community bonds beyond death. Medieval churches sometimes displayed images of purgatory showing souls suffering in flames, while angels and demons battled for them. These images made the abstract doctrine concrete and reminded people that their deceased relatives were experiencing real suffering that prayers could alleviate. Seeing these images encouraged people to have masses said and to live virtuously so as to spend less time in purgatory themselves. The Black Death, which killed between 30 and 60% of Europe's population in the mid-14th century, intensified ghost beliefs. With so many dead, often buried in mass graves without proper rites, people feared the dead would not rest peacefully. Chronicles from the plague years describe increased reports of ghost sightings, spectral processions, and supernatural phenomena. The overwhelming presence of death made the dead seem more present. The late medieval period also saw the development of danse macabre, or dance of death imagery. These were artistic representations showing death as a skeleton leading people from all social classes in a dance toward the grave. While not strictly about ghosts, these images reflected medieval preoccupation with death and the relationship between living and dead. Death was personified and made tangible. The dead were not distant, but rather constant companions of the living. Medieval ghost beliefs were complex, combining Christian theology, folk traditions, classical inheritance from Greece and Rome, and lived experience. Ghosts served theological purposes, social functions, and psychological needs. They maintained connection with the dead, encouraged religious practice, reinforced moral behavior, and helped people process grief and loss. The medieval period established ghost concepts that would dominate Western culture for centuries. Ghosts as souls of the dead seeking help from the living, ghost appearances as having specific purpose and meaning, the possibility of communication between living and dead, and the power of ritual and prayer to affect both living and dead. These beliefs would be challenged during the Reformation and Enlightenment, but would never entirely disappear. They continue to influence modern Western ghost beliefs. The popular image of ghosts as spirits of the dead with unfinished business, appearing to the living to request help or deliver warnings, comes directly from medieval theology. Medieval Europe created ghost theology. It systematized beliefs that had existed in scattered form and created a coherent framework explaining what ghosts were, where they came from, what they wanted, and how to respond to them. This framework shaped European ghost beliefs for over 1,000 years, and through colonial expansion, would influence ghost concepts worldwide. But Europe was not the only region developing elaborate ghost traditions. Asia, particularly Japan, created equally sophisticated ghost beliefs with their own theology, categories, and rituals. Japanese ghost traditions differ fundamentally from European concepts, revealing alternative ways of understanding the relationship between living and dead. Chapter 3. Japanese Yurei and Asian Ghost Traditions. Japanese ghost traditions are among the most developed and sophisticated in the world. The Japanese term for ghost is yurei, written with characters meaning dim or faint, and spirit or soul. A yurei is the spirit of a deceased person, unable to rest peacefully and move on to the afterlife. Japanese ghost beliefs merge Buddhist and Shinto concepts. Shinto, the indigenous Japanese religion, emphasizes spirits called kami, associated with nature, places, and ancestors. Buddhism, which arrived in Japan in the 6th century, brought concepts of reincarnation, karma, and various spirit realms. The synthesis created unique Japanese ghost theology. In Japanese belief, when a person dies properly, naturally from age or illness, with family present, receiving proper funeral rites, their spirit proceeds peacefully to the afterlife. The specifics of the afterlife depend on Buddhist sect. Some believe in Pure Land paradise. Others emphasize reincarnation based on karma. But whatever the destination, proper death and proper rites allow smooth transition. However, certain circumstances prevent peaceful transition. Those who die suddenly or violently through murder, suicide, accident, or battle do not have time to prepare spiritually for death. Their spirits remain attached to the world, confused, and unable to move on. Those who die with strong emotions, rage, grief, jealousy, love, have their spirits bound to earth by those passions. Those who die without proper funeral rites lack the religious framework to guide them to the afterlife. These spirits become yurei. Yurei are characterized by unfinished business. They remain in the living world because something prevents them from moving on. This might be desire for vengeance against their killer. It might be inability to let go of a loved one. It might be attachment to a place or object. It might be need for proper burial or religious rites they never received. Whatever the specific cause, yurei are trapped between worlds by unfulfilled needs or desires. Japanese iconography depicts yurei with distinctive appearance. They wear white burial kimono. Their hair is long, black, and disheveled. Their arms hang limply at their sides or raise in supplication. Most characteristically, they have no feet or legs, floating above the ground. Their appearance is pale, almost translucent. They often appear with hitodama, floating balls of ghostly fire that represent separated souls. This imagery was standardized in Edo period woodblock prints, particularly those by artist Maruyama Okyo, and later by Hokusai and others. These prints circulated widely and established how Japanese people visualized ghosts. The image became so iconic that it influences Japanese ghost depictions to this day. Yurei are classified into categories based on why they became ghosts. Onryo are vengeful ghosts, spirits who died in rage or hatred and return to take revenge on the living. These are the most dangerous category. Onryo possess supernatural power fueled by their rage. They can kill the living, cause disasters, and spread disease. They will not rest until they achieve vengeance or are somehow appeased. The most famous Onryo in Japanese culture is Oiwa from the story Yosuya Kaiden. Oiwa was a woman whose husband wanted to leave her for a wealthy woman. He gave Oiwa poison disguised as medicine. The poison disfigured her face. When she saw herself in a mirror, she died of shock. Her vengeful ghost returned to haunt and kill her husband and everyone who wronged her. This story was first performed as a kabuki play in 1825 and has been adapted countless times in theatre, film, and literature. The Oiwa story establishes the Onryo pattern. Betrayal leads to death. Death creates vengeful ghost. Ghost achieves revenge. This narrative structure appears in Japanese ghost stories across centuries. The ghost is not evil, but rather righteous anger given supernatural form. The living who wrong the dead deserve their fate. Ubum are ghosts of women who died in childbirth. These spirits are driven by maternal love and concern for their children. Ubum appear holding babies, desperately seeking care for the infant they could not protect in life. Sometimes the baby is real, sometimes the baby is ghostly. Ubum haunt the areas where they died, unable to move on while worrying about their children. Funayurei are ghosts of those who died at sea. Sailors feared these spirits, who were said to approach ships at night and ask for ladles. If a sailor gave them a ladle, the Funayurei would use it to fill the ship with water and sink it, drowning the crew to create more Funayurei. Wise sailors would give ladles with the bottom knocked out, preventing the ghosts from sinking the ship. Goryo are ghosts of nobility or aristocrats who died in political intrigue or were unjustly executed. These spirits were particularly feared because their high social status in life gave them power in death. Goryo could cause natural disasters, epidemics, and political chaos. They required elaborate ritual appeasement. Japan has shrines specifically built to appease famous Goryo, transforming them from vengeful spirits into protective kami. The most famous Goryo is Sugawara no Mishizan, a scholar and politician who died in exile in 903 after being falsely accused by rivals. After his death, his enemies began dying mysteriously. Natural disasters struck the capital. People believed Mishizan's angry spirit was taking revenge. To appease him, he was deified as Tenjin, the kami of learning. Shrines to Tenjin were built throughout Japan. He transformed from feared Goryo to beloved protector god. This transformation reveals an important aspect of Japanese ghost beliefs. Spirits can be transformed through proper ritual and veneration. A vengeful ghost can become a protective deity if properly honored. This gives the living power to transform dangerous spirits into beneficial ones. Japanese Buddhism developed elaborate rituals for dealing with yurei. Funeral rites are designed to ensure the dead transition properly to the afterlife. The deceased receives a Buddhist name, posthumous ordination as a monk or nun, and a series of ceremonies marking their progress through intermediate state before rebirth. Memorial services continue for years after death, strengthening the deceased's positive karma and ensuring they are reborn in favorable circumstances. For yurei who have already formed, Buddhist priests can perform exorcisms and appeasement rituals. These involve chanting sutras, making offerings, and resolving whatever unfinished business binds the ghost. If a yurei seeks vengeance, the living descendants of those who wronged them might offer formal apology. If a yurei lacks proper burial, their remains are found and buried with full rites. If a yurei is attached to an object, that object is ritually purified or destroyed. Shinto also has methods for dealing with spirits. Shinto priests can perform purification rituals, erect protective barriers, and make offerings to appease troubled spirits. Some shrines specialize in dealing with ghosts and offer services for people experiencing hauntings. Japanese haunted locations are numerous and often maintained as tourist sites. Aokigahara, the forest at the base of Mount Fuji, is known for a high number of suicides. People believe the forest is haunted by yurei of those who died there. Hirosaki Castle in northern Japan is famous for being haunted by a woman unjustly executed as a Christian in the 17th century. Various battlefields, particularly from the Sengoku period of civil war, are believed to be haunted by soldiers who died violent deaths. Japanese ghost stories, called kaiden, form major genre in literature, theatre, and later film. The tradition began with Buddhist tales meant to encourage virtue and discourage sin. It evolved into entertainment genre during the Edo period, when kabuki theatre and storytelling developed elaborate ghost plays. The 19th century saw publication of collected ghost story anthologies, most famously Lafcadio Hearn's Quidun. The 20th century brought Japanese ghost stories to film. The golden age of Japanese ghost films occurred in the 1950s and 60s, with classics like Ugetsu, Kwaidan, and Onibaba. These films used traditional ghost narratives, but presented them with sophisticated cinematography and psychological depth. They influenced global horror cinema. Modern Japanese horror, particularly the J-horror boom of the 1990s and 2000s, revitalized ghost stories for contemporary audiences. Films like Ring, Ju-on, The Grudge, and Dark Water created new iconography, long-haired ghosts in white, ghosts emerging from technological devices, curses that spread like contagion, while maintaining traditional yurei characteristics. What distinguishes Japanese ghost beliefs from Western concepts? Several key differences stand out. Japanese ghosts are strongly tied to emotion and psychology. They exist because of strong feelings, rage, grief, love, that bind them to the world. Western ghosts, particularly in Christian theology, are tied to place and unfinished business, but less explicitly to emotional states. Japanese ghosts can affect physical reality dramatically. They can kill, cause disasters, and manifest visibly and tangibly. Western ghosts in medieval theology were less powerful, more limited to appearances and messages. Japanese ghosts are dangerous in ways European purgatorial ghosts were not. Japanese culture has more acceptance of ghosts as a normal part of reality. Ghost stories are mainstream entertainment, not fringe belief. Haunted locations are tourist destinations, not hidden, shameful places. This may reflect Buddhism's emphasis on impermanence and interconnection. If reality is fluid and nothing permanent, boundaries between living and dead are less absolute. Japanese approaches to dealing with ghosts emphasize transformation rather than elimination. The goal is not to destroy the ghost, but to help it move on or transform it into protective spirit. This reflects Buddhist compassion and Shinto belief in transforming negative energy into positive energy. Western exorcism often emphasizes commanding or banishing demons, treating them as evil to be expelled. Japanese rituals treat yurei as suffering beings who need help. China has equally rich ghost traditions, though different from Japan's. Chinese ghosts are called gui, spirits of the dead, who have not moved on to the afterlife, or who have returned from it. Chinese tradition emphasizes ancestor veneration. Properly honoring deceased relatives ensures they become benevolent ancestors who protect and guide descendants. Neglecting ancestral rites causes ancestors to become hungry ghosts who torment the living. The Ghost Festival, celebrated on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, is when the gates between the living and dead open. Ghosts return to visit the living. Families make offerings of food, burn incense and joss paper, and perform rituals to honor both their ancestors and unclaimed ghosts who have no one to care for them. This prevents hungry ghosts from becoming troublesome. Chinese Buddhism describes the hungry ghost realm as one of 6 realms of existence in the cycle of rebirth. Hungry ghosts are beings reborn in this realm as punishment for greed, selfishness, or harmful behaviors in past lives. They are depicted with enormous distended bellies and tiny mouths, eternally hungry but unable to eat. Some Chinese Buddhist texts say all ghosts who haunt the living are actually hungry ghosts from this realm. Chinese ghost stories form major literary genre. Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, compiled by Pu Songling in the 17th century, contains nearly 500 supernatural tales, many involving ghosts. These stories present ghosts as complex beings, some malevolent, some benevolent, some seeking love, some seeking justice. They reflect Confucian ethics, Buddhist karma, and Taoist cosmology. Korean ghost beliefs combine shamanism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Korean ghosts are called guishin. Like Japanese yurei, they are spirits of the dead with unfinished business. Korean shamans, called mudang, perform rituals called gut to appease troubled spirits. These elaborate ceremonies involve music, dance, offerings, and communication with the dead. Thailand has pai, spirits that include ghosts of the dead among various supernatural beings. Thai ghost beliefs merge Buddhism with local animist traditions. The Phai Tai Hong are ghosts of those who died sudden or violent deaths. They are feared and require appeasement. Thai culture has elaborate ghost stories and ghost films, and spirit houses are common outside buildings to provide homes for local spirits. Across Asia, ghost beliefs share common elements. Spirits of the dead can linger in the world under certain circumstances. They are connected to specific places or people. They can affect the living. They require ritual intervention to resolve their presence, and they reveal cultural values about death, family, emotion, and the relationship between living and dead. Asian ghost traditions differ from Western Christian traditions in fundamental ways. Asian ghosts are more integrated into everyday life and mainstream culture. They are less connected to specific religious doctrine and more to cultural practice. They emphasize transformation and resolution rather than banishment or destruction, and they treat ghosts as suffering beings worthy of compassion rather than evil entities to be expelled. These differences reflect broader cultural differences in attitudes toward death, ancestors, emotion, and the spirit world. But the universality of ghost beliefs, every Asian culture has elaborate ghost traditions, just as every Western culture does, suggests something fundamental about human psychology. We believe in ghosts not because they exist or don't exist, but because believing in them serves important psychological, social, and cultural functions. Ghosts maintain connection with the dead. They provide framework for processing grief and loss. They reinforce cultural values and moral behavior. They give meaning to tragedy. They make death less absolute and less terrifying. They allow the possibility that consciousness continues beyond physical death. These functions are universal across cultures, even as specific ghost beliefs vary dramatically. Africa has equally sophisticated ghost and ancestor traditions, but they differ significantly from both Western and Asian concepts. African traditional religions emphasize the living dead, deceased who are still remembered by living people, as distinct category between living and fully dead. Understanding African ghost beliefs requires understanding this unique concept of the living dead and its role in African spirituality. Chapter 4: African Ancestor Spirits and the Living Dead. African traditional religions have unique concepts about death and spirits that differ fundamentally from Western and Asian beliefs. The key concept is the living dead, a term coined by African theologian John Mbiti to describe the deceased who remain part of the living community through memory and ritual. In many African traditional religions, death is not a single event, but a gradual process. When a person dies physically, they enter an intermediate state. They are no longer fully alive, but not yet fully dead. As long as living people remember them personally, know their name, and maintain relationship with them through ritual, they remain the living dead. They are ancestors in transition. The living dead are present and active in the lives of their descendants. They watch over the family. They provide guidance through dreams and signs. They can intervene to help or harm depending on how they are treated. They require regular offerings and acknowledgement. In return, they protect and guide the living. This state continues as long as anyone alive personally knew the deceased. But eventually, all who remember die themselves. When the last person who knew the deceased dies, that person transitions from living dead to fully dead. They join the collective ancestors, losing individual identity and becoming part of generalized ancestral power. This belief creates strong connection between living and dead. The dead are not distant or in another realm. They are present, watching, participating in family life. Families consult ancestors through divination, make offerings at shrines, and maintain ongoing relationships with deceased relatives. Among the Yoruba people of Nigeria, ancestors called Igun or Igungun are central to religious life. The Yoruba believe that when a person dies with proper character, having lived a good life, their soul becomes ancestor who continues to guide family. Annual Egungun festivals involve masked dancers who embody ancestors, allowing the dead to physically manifest among the living. These masked dancers, completely covered in elaborate cloth costumes, are believed to actually become ancestors during the ceremony. They speak with ancestral voices, discipline wayward family members, bless the community, and demonstrate that the ancestors remain active. To see the person under the mask is forbidden and dangerous. It would break the spiritual power and offend the ancestors. The Yoruba also believe in various spirits beyond ancestors. Orisha are powerful spiritual beings who control aspects of nature and human life. Some Orisha were once humans who achieved divine status. Others are primordial forces. The Orisha interact with the living through possession, during religious ceremonies, through divination, and through direct intervention in daily life. Among the Akan peoples of Ghana, ancestors called Nananom Nsamanfo are equally important. The Akan believe every person has Sonsum, a spiritual personality that survives death. If the person lived well and died properly, their sunsum becomes ancestor. If they died badly or lived wickedly, their sunsum becomes saman, a malevolent ghost. Saman are dangerous spirits who haunt the living, cause illness, and create problems. They are the Akan equivalent of restless ghosts. They exist because something went wrong: improper death, wicked life, lack of proper burial rites, or strong negative emotions at death. Saman must be identified through divination and dealt with through ritual. Sometimes they can be transformed into ancestors through proper ceremony. Other times, they must be driven away or contained. The Zulu people of South Africa believe in amadlozi, ancestor spirits who continue to influence family affairs. Zulu traditional religion emphasizes maintaining good relationship with amadlozi through offerings, rituals, and moral behavior. Ancestors who are neglected become angry and cause misfortune. They send messages through dreams, through divination, and through possession of living family members. Zulu tradition includes ukuthwasa, a calling to become sangoma, a traditional healer and diviner. This calling comes from ancestors, often causing illness in the chosen person until they accept their calling. Once they undergo initiation and training, they can communicate with ancestors, perform healing rituals, and serve as intermediaries between living and dead. East African peoples, including Kikuyu, Maasai, and others, have similar beliefs about spirits of the dead continuing to influence the living. The specific theologies vary, but the pattern is consistent. Proper death and proper burial allow the deceased to become benevolent ancestors. Improper death or neglect creates troubled spirits, and the living must maintain relationship with the dead through offerings and ritual. In West Africa, the Yu people of Ghana and Togo believe that humans consist of physical body, soul, and personal spirit. After death, the soul journeys to the land of the dead, while the personal spirit may linger near the body or in familiar places. If the spirit has unfinished business, or was not properly sent off with funeral rites, it becomes ghost that haunts the living. Yu tradition describes various categories of troublesome spirits. Those who die childless wander restlessly because they have no descendants to remember them. Those who died violently seek revenge. Those who died suddenly without chance to say goodbye to family remain attached to loved ones. These spirits require ritual intervention by priests who can identify them, determine what they need, and help them move on to proper place in the spirit world. The Dogon people of Mali have elaborate cosmology, including beliefs about spirits of the dead. Dogon funerals are complex multi-stage ceremonies that gradually transform the deceased from corpse to ancestor. Masks play a crucial role in these ceremonies. Certain masks represent spirits of the dead and are worn by dancers who embody those spirits during funeral rites. Central African peoples, including the Congo, Luba, and others, believe in powerful ancestor spirits who can possess the living to deliver messages or display supernatural power. Some individuals become professional spirit mediums, trained to safely channel ancestors. These mediums enter trance states during which ancestors speak through them, offering guidance, warnings, or blessings to the community. The Congo believe that after death, the person's spirit crosses water to reach the land of the dead, which exists below the living world. The two worlds are inverted mirrors. When it is day in the land of the living, it is night in the land of the dead. The spirits can cross back over water to visit the living, particularly during dreams or rituals performed near water. Southern African peoples, including the Shona and Ndebele, maintain ancestor shrines where family members make regular offerings and communicate with the dead. These shrines might be inside homes or in sacred groves. The offerings include beer, food, tobacco, and other items the ancestors enjoyed in life. Making offerings maintains good relationship with ancestors and ensures their protection. African traditional religions generally do not have concept of hell or eternal punishment. The dead go to ancestral realm, which is neither reward nor punishment, but simply where the dead exist. The quality of afterlife depends more on whether proper rituals were performed and whether the living maintain relationship with the dead than on moral behavior in life. This creates different relationship with ghosts than Western or Asian traditions. African spirits are not usually seeking help to move on to better place, as in Christian purgatorial theology. They are not trapped by karma or emotion, as in Asian beliefs. Instead, they are part of ongoing community, requiring maintenance of proper relationships. When spirits become troublesome in African tradition, it is usually because relationships have broken down. The living neglected offerings, violated taboos, failed to perform required rituals, or otherwise offended the ancestors. The solution is to repair the relationship through proper offerings, apologies, and renewed commitment to maintaining connection. This emphasis on relationship rather than geography, the dead are not in distant heaven or hell but present in the community, means African ghost beliefs are more integrated into daily life than in traditions that separate living and dead more absolutely. The boundary is permeable and constantly crossed. African Christianity and Islam have interacted with these traditional beliefs in complex ways. Many African Christians and Muslims maintain simultaneous belief in their adopted religion and traditional ancestor practices. They might attend church or mosque while also making offerings at ancestor shrines. They integrate Christian or Islamic theology with traditional understandings of how spirits work. This syncretism creates unique forms of Christianity and Islam found only in Africa. African independent churches often incorporate ancestor veneration, spirit possession, and traditional healing into Christian framework. African Islamic practices often blend Quranic theology with traditional beliefs about spirits and ancestors. The African diaspora carried these beliefs to the Americas through the slave trade. In the Caribbean and Latin America, African traditional religions merged with Catholicism to create religions like Vodou in Haiti, Santeria in Cuba, and Candomblé in Brazil. These religions maintain African concepts of ancestors, spirits, and the relationship between living and dead while incorporating Catholic saints and ritual elements. Vodou, perhaps the most famous, centers on LWA, spirits who include ancestors, African deities, and sometimes historical figures. The LWA possess devotees during ceremonies, delivering messages and blessings. The tradition maintains strong emphasis on ancestors and on ongoing relationship between living and dead. African ghost beliefs reveal alternative ways of conceptualizing death and spirits. Rather than seeing death as absolute break, African traditions emphasize continuity. Rather than focusing on individual afterlife destination, they emphasize community continuing across death boundary. Rather than seeking to banish troubled spirits, they seek to repair relationships and integrate spirits into proper roles. These differences reflect broader African cultural values: community over individual, relationship over rules, integration over separation, balance over absolutes. The living dead concept, that the recently deceased remain part of living community, is uniquely African and provides different framework for understanding ghosts than Western or Asian traditions offer. But like all ghost traditions, African beliefs serve important functions. They maintain connection with the dead, provide framework for dealing with grief, reinforce cultural values and proper behavior, give meaning to death, and ensure that the deceased are not forgotten. These universal functions appear in every culture's ghost beliefs, even as the specific theologies and practices vary dramatically. Native American peoples developed equally sophisticated spirit beliefs, though with enormous diversity across hundreds of distinct cultures. Understanding Native American ghost concepts requires acknowledging this diversity rather than treating Native Americans as a single homogeneous group. Each nation has unique beliefs, but certain patterns emerge across many traditions. Chapter 5: Native American Spirit Worlds. Native American spiritual traditions are extraordinarily diverse. From the Inuit of the Arctic to the Mapuche of Patagonia, hundreds of distinct cultures developed unique beliefs about death, spirits, and the relationship between living and dead. Any attempt to summarize Native American ghost beliefs risks oversimplification, but certain themes appear across many traditions. Most Native American cultures believe in multiple souls or spiritual components within each person. The Lakota believe humans have 4 souls. One soul stays with the body after death. One goes to the spirit world. One becomes a ghost if certain conditions are met. One reincarnates in descendants. This complexity means death does not result in single outcome, but rather multiple spiritual processes occurring simultaneously. Many traditions describe a journey the soul must make after death. The Navajo believe the deceased must travel to the north, crossing dangerous obstacles to reach the afterlife. The journey takes 4 days. During this time, the living perform ceremonies to help the deceased travel safely. The Ojibwe describe a path of souls along the Milky Way, which spirits of the dead travel to reach the land of the dead. Proper funeral rites are essential across Native American cultures. These rites help the deceased transition to the spirit world and prevent them from lingering as ghosts. The Cherokee traditionally placed the deceased's possessions with the body, so the spirit would have everything needed in the afterlife. The Tlingit held elaborate funeral potlatches lasting days, ensuring the deceased was properly honored and released to the spirit world. When proper rites are not performed, or when death occurs under wrong circumstances, spirits may linger as ghosts. Many traditions describe spirits of those who died violently, died young, or died far from home as more likely to become ghosts. These spirits are confused, unable to complete the journey to the land of the dead, and may wander seeking help or causing problems. The Inuit traditionally feared spirits of the dead and had elaborate taboos to prevent ghosts from forming. When someone died, their name could not be spoken for a period of time. Their possessions were often destroyed or buried with them. The living moved to a different camp if someone died, leaving the ghost behind. These practices reflected belief that improperly handled death created dangerous spirits. Many Plains peoples, including Lakota, Cheyenne, and Blackfoot, believed in Wanagi, spirits of the dead. Wanagi could appear to the living, particularly to family members. They might deliver messages, offer guidance, or warn of danger. But they also could become troublesome, if not properly honored. Some Wanagi became malevolent, especially if they died badly or were forgotten by the living. The Lakota held Wanagi Uwipi ceremonies, where spirits of the dead were called to communicate with the living. A medicine man would be bound and placed in darkness. Spirits would manifest through sounds, movements, and voices. The spirits could answer questions, find lost objects, heal illnesses, and provide guidance. This ceremony created a controlled environment for interaction between living and dead. Pueblo peoples of the Southwest, including Hopi, Zuni, and others, believe deceased ancestors become kachinas, spirit beings who reside in sacred mountains and visit the living during certain seasons. Kachinas are not exactly ghosts, but rather transformed ancestors who have become part of spiritual hierarchy. They appear during ceremonial dances, embodied by masked dancers who take on spiritual power of the kachinas they represent. This belief parallels African concepts of ancestors transforming into protective spirits. The deceased do not simply exist in afterlife, but become active spiritual forces who continue influencing the living. The boundary between human and spirit is permeable, and death is transformation rather than ending. Northwest Coast peoples, including Haida, Tlingit, and Kwakwaka'wakw, believed spirits of the dead could reincarnate in descendants, particularly if the deceased person strongly desired to return. A child born with birthmark in location of wound that killed an ancestor might be identified as that ancestor reborn. The child would be given the ancestor's name and taught their stories, maintaining continuity between generations. Many eastern woodland peoples, including Iroquois, Algonquin, and others, believed the dead journeyed west to reach the land of the dead. The Iroquois described a strawberry-lined path that souls followed. The land of the dead was a place of abundance and peace where ancestors lived much as they had in life, but without suffering or conflict. But not all dead reached this peaceful destination. Those who died violently or with strong attachments might linger as ghosts. The Iroquois had ceremonies to release troubled spirits and help them complete their journey. False Face Society members wore wooden masks and performed healing ceremonies that could banish malevolent spirits and assist troubled souls. Many traditions include beliefs about dangerous spirits beyond simple ghosts. The Algonquin peoples describe the Wendigo, a malevolent spirit associated with winter, starvation, and cannibalism. The Wendigo was sometimes said to be a person who resorted to cannibalism and became transformed into a monster. Other accounts describe it as a spirit that possessed humans, driving them to cannibalism. The Wendigo represents the danger of spirits that cross boundaries between human and inhuman, living and dead. The Navajo have elaborate beliefs about Chindi, ghosts of the dead that remain if proper funeral rites are not performed. Chindi are dangerous and can cause sickness, particularly ghost sickness, which affects those who encounter them. The Navajo traditionally avoided the dead and anything associated with death to prevent contact with Chindi. Hugan, where someone died, was often abandoned. Objects that belonged to the deceased were buried with them. This avoidance of the dead contrasts with traditions that emphasize maintaining relationship with ancestors. The difference reflects varying beliefs about whether the dead are benevolent ancestors who protect the living or dangerous spirits who threaten them. Both concepts appear across Native American traditions, sometimes within the same culture, depending on circumstances of death and quality of funeral rites. Many traditions include medicine people, shamans, or spiritual leaders who can communicate with spirits, including spirits of the dead. These individuals undergo extensive training and often have special relationships with spirit helpers. They can enter altered states to journey to spirit worlds, retrieve lost souls, negotiate with spirits, and perform healings that address spiritual causes of illness. The vision quest, practiced in various forms across many traditions, sometimes involves encounter with spirits, including deceased ancestors. A person seeking spiritual guidance would fast, pray, and isolate themselves until they received vision. This vision might include messages from ancestors, spirit helpers, or other spiritual beings. The boundary between living and dead was permeable during these liminal spiritual states. Ghost dance religion, which emerged among Great Plains peoples in the late 19th century, explicitly centered on the return of the dead. The prophet Wovoka taught that performing the ghost dance would bring back deceased ancestors, restore pre-contact way of life, and remove European colonizers. The movement reflected devastating impact of colonization, disease, and warfare that killed vast numbers of native peoples. The desire to bring back the dead expressed collective grief and hope for restoration. Though the prophecy did not literally manifest, ghost dance revealed how deeply death and spirits were integrated into Native American responses to historical trauma. The dead were not distant, but rather could potentially return. The boundary between living and dead could be crossed through proper ritual and spiritual power. Native American ghost beliefs, like African traditions, emphasize ongoing relationship between living and dead rather than absolute separation. The dead remain present, capable of helping or harming, requiring proper treatment and acknowledgement. Death is transition rather than ending. Spirits can transform, reincarnate, or continue influencing the living. These beliefs were severely disrupted by European colonization. forced conversion to Christianity, suppression of traditional religious practices, removal from ancestral lands where spirits dwelt, and boarding schools that separated children from traditional teachings, all damaged transmission of spiritual knowledge. Many traditional practices went underground or were lost entirely, but Native American spiritual traditions have proven resilient. Many communities maintain traditional beliefs alongside or integrated with Christianity. Powwows, ceremonies, and cultural practices continue. Traditional healing and spiritual practices persist. The living dead of colonization, ancestors killed by disease, warfare, and genocide, remain present in collective memory and spiritual practice. Understanding Native American ghost beliefs requires understanding the ongoing trauma of colonization and the resilience of indigenous spirituality. The spirits of ancestors who died in massacres, on reservations, in boarding schools are not distant historical figures, but recent dead who remain part of living memory. The genocide created vast numbers of troubled spirits, those who died violently, far from home, without proper rites. Dealing with these spirits is part of contemporary Native American spiritual practice. Islamic tradition has sophisticated beliefs about spirits and the invisible world, but Islamic ghosts differ fundamentally from Christian, Asian, and African concepts. Understanding Islamic spirits requires understanding jinn, beings created from smokeless fire who occupy parallel existence to humans and angels. Chapter 6: Islamic Jinn and the Invisible World. Islamic theology divides creation into three categories of intelligent beings: angels created from light, humans created from clay, and jinn created from smokeless fire. Each category has distinct nature and role in divine order. Jinn are the most relevant to ghost beliefs because they inhabit the invisible world that intersects with the human world. Jinn are mentioned extensively in the Quran. Surah 72 is named Al-Jinn and describes jinn listening to the Quran being recited. The Quran confirms jinn are real beings. They can be righteous or wicked. Some accept Islam while others reject it, and they will be judged on the Day of Judgment like humans. According to Islamic tradition, jinn were created before humans. They lived on earth before Adam was created. They have free will, can choose between good and evil, and are accountable for their actions. Righteous jinn worship Allah and will enter paradise. Wicked jinn, called shayatin, demons, follow Iblis, Satan, and will go to hell. Jinn are generally invisible to humans, but can make themselves visible if they choose. They can take various forms, commonly appearing as animals, particularly black dogs or snakes. They can possess humans, causing illness, madness, or behavioral changes. They can interact with physical world, moving objects, making sounds, and affecting human affairs. Most importantly for ghost beliefs, jinn are often mistaken for ghosts. When people report seeing spirits, hearing voices, or experiencing supernatural phenomena, Islamic interpretation often attributes these to jinn rather than spirits of the dead. This is because Islamic theology, like Christianity, has specific beliefs about what happens after death that make traditional ghost haunting difficult to reconcile with doctrine. In Islamic belief, when a person dies, their soul is taken by the angel of death. The soul then enters barzakh, an intermediate state between death and resurrection. Barzakh is where souls remain until the Day of Judgment. During barzakh, souls experience preview of their eventual fate, either comfort and peace if they were righteous, or suffering if they were wicked. Importantly, souls in barzakh cannot return to the earthly world to haunt the living. They are in a separate realm, awaiting judgment. This theology creates problem for ghost beliefs. If souls cannot return, what are people experiencing when they think they see ghosts? Islamic scholarship offers several explanations. Most commonly, a apparent ghosts are actually jinn impersonating the dead to deceive the living. Jinn have knowledge of recently deceased people and can take their form to mislead people. This interpretation explains ghost sightings while maintaining doctrine that souls cannot leave Barzakh. Some scholars allow for limited exceptions. They permit that a living person might dream of a deceased person and receive true message through the dream. This is not the soul returning, but rather Allah allowing communication through dream vision. The dead person appears in the dream, but their soul remains in Barzakh. This maintains orthodox theology while acknowledging people's experiences of receiving messages from deceased relatives. Folk Islam, the traditional practices that exist alongside orthodox theology, contains more elaborate beliefs about spirits and the invisible world. These folk beliefs often merge pre-Islamic traditions with Islamic framework, creating rich supernatural cosmology. In many Muslim cultures, people believe certain locations are inhabited by jinn. Abandoned places, ruins, crossroads, bathrooms, and markets are considered jinn haunts. Wells, rivers, and other water sources are jinn dwelling places. Trees, particularly old or unusual trees, house jinn. People take precautions when entering these spaces, saying prayers, and asking permission from any jinn present. Many cultures have beliefs about specific types of jinn. The Malay tradition describes various kinds, including the Pontianak, female vampire spirit associated with women who died in childbirth. The Penanggalan is even more horrifying, a woman's head with organs attached that detaches from her body at night to fly around attacking people. These beings are considered types of jinn in Islamic framework, but closely resemble ghost beliefs from pre-Islamic traditions. Middle Eastern traditions describe the ghoul, a type of jinn that haunts graveyards and deserts, feeds on corpses, and attacks travelers. The ghoul entered Western literature and became the grave-robbing, undead creature familiar from horror fiction. But in Islamic tradition, ghouls are jinn, not reanimated human corpses. Persian tradition has particularly elaborate jinn beliefs, influenced by pre-Islamic Zoroastrian cosmology. Persian folklore describes numerous categories of jinn and spirits called div, pari, and others. Some are benevolent, others malevolent. These spirits interact with humans, make bargains, grant wishes, or cause harm. Famous stories from the 1001 Nights feature jinn prominently, showing their role in Islamic literary tradition. South Asian Islamic tradition merged with Hindu and Buddhist beliefs to create syncretic supernatural cosmology. The Bhut, a ghost of the Hindu tradition, was reinterpreted as a type of jinn in Islamic framework. The Churel, spirit of a woman who died in childbirth, similarly became classified as jinn, while maintaining characteristics from pre-Islamic belief. Indonesian and Malaysian Islamic traditions merged with local animist beliefs. The various spirits of pre-Islamic tradition were reclassified as jinn, but retained their characteristics and the rituals for dealing with them. This created distinctly Indonesian and Malaysian forms of Islam that incorporate vast pantheon of spirits while maintaining Islamic monotheism. The Islamic world has traditions of exorcism similar to Christian practices. Ruqya is the Islamic exorcism ritual, performed by reading Quran verses, making supplications, and sometimes using blessed water or olive oil. Ruqya is used to expel jinn who are possessing a person or causing supernatural harm. The practice is controversial. Some scholars accept it as legitimate, while others consider it superstition. Muslim communities have practitioners called Raqi who specialize in Ruqya. They diagnose jinn possession, determine what type of jinn is involved, and perform rituals to expel it. They also create protective amulets, inscribe Quranic verses for protection, and advise people on avoiding jinn. Some Islamic scholars condemn these practices as superstition that contradicts pure monotheism. They argue that excessive focus on jinn and spirits distracts from worship of Allah and leads to polytheistic beliefs. But folk practice persists, and many Muslims consult Raqi for problems they attribute to jinn. The evil eye is widely believed across the Islamic world. The idea that someone's envious gaze can cause harm is ancient, predating Islam, but was incorporated into Islamic framework. The Prophet Muhammad reportedly acknowledged the reality of the evil eye. Many Muslims wear blue eye amulets, recite protective verses, and take precautions against the evil eye. Though not related to ghosts specifically, evil eye belief reflects broader acceptance of invisible spiritual forces affecting daily life. Sihr, magic or sorcery, is forbidden in Islam but widely believed to exist. Sorcerers are thought to work with jinn to cause harm, creating illness, destroying relationships, causing financial ruin. When someone experiences misfortune, they might attribute it to sihr and seek counter-magic or ruqya to remove it. This creates supernatural framework where invisible forces, specifically jinn manipulated by human sorcerers, explain otherwise inexplicable misfortune. Islamic dream interpretation tradition, based on hadith and classical texts, takes seriously the idea that dreams can carry meaning. Some dreams come from Allah and contain true messages or warnings. Some dreams come from one's own thoughts and have no special meaning. Some dreams come from Satan or jinn, attempting to frighten or deceive the dreamer. Seeing deceased relatives in dreams might be true communication permitted by Allah, or it might be jinn deception. This creates ambiguity. Islamic theology says souls cannot leave barzakh, but folk belief and personal experience suggest communication with the dead through dreams. Scholars navigate this by distinguishing between the soul actually returning, impossible, and Allah allowing communication through dream vision, possible. This maintains orthodox theology while validating experience. Visiting graves and making supplication for the deceased is encouraged in Islam. Muslims visit graveyards on Fridays and religious holidays to pray for the dead, but communicating with the dead or asking them for help is forbidden as it approaches shirk, associating partners with Allah. The line between honoring the dead and worshipping them is carefully policed in orthodox theology, but often blurred in folk practice. Sufi Islamic mysticism has more elaborate beliefs about spiritual hierarchies and the invisible world. Sufis believe in awliya, saints who have achieved spiritual proximity to Allah. Some Sufi traditions believe these saints can perform miracles even after death and can intercede with Allah for the living. Shrines to Sufi saints are pilgrimage sites where people seek blessings and help. Critics argue this resembles saint veneration in Catholicism and contradicts Islamic monotheism. Sufi practitioners argue they are not worshipping saints, but honoring them and seeking their intercession with Allah. Islamic ghost beliefs, such as they are, differ from Christian, Asian, African, and Native American traditions. Islam attributes supernatural phenomena to jinn rather than spirits of the dead. The dead cannot return from barzakh. Communication through dreams is possible but ambiguous. Apparent ghost sightings are jinn deception. This theology eliminates traditional ghost haunting while maintaining rich supernatural cosmology. But folk Islam, practiced across diverse Muslim cultures, incorporates local spiritual traditions into Islamic framework. Pre-Islamic beliefs about spirits, ancestors, and supernatural beings persist, reclassified as types of jinn. This creates enormous diversity in how Muslims across different cultures understand and interact with the invisible world. The Islamic approach demonstrates how major world religions handle ghost beliefs. Orthodox theology often restricts or eliminates traditional ghost haunting, but folk practice maintains connection with the dead and belief in spirits. The living need to believe in ongoing relationship with the dead and in spiritual explanations for otherwise inexplicable phenomena. Religious authorities attempt to channel these needs into doctrinally acceptable forms, with varying success. Hindu and Buddhist traditions offer yet another framework for understanding spirits of the dead. These traditions, rooted in concepts of karma and reincarnation, see death not as transition to permanent afterlife, but as transition to rebirth. This creates unique ghost theology, where spirits are beings temporarily stuck between incarnations. Chapter 7. Hindu and Buddhist Spirit Realms. Hindu and Buddhist traditions share fundamental concepts about death and rebirth that distinguish them from Abrahamic religions. Both traditions teach that consciousness continues after death and takes rebirth in a new form based on karma, the moral consequences of past actions. This cycle of death and rebirth, called samsara, continues until one achieves liberation. In Hindu belief, when a person dies, the soul called Atman leaves the body and enters intermediate state. The soul's next rebirth depends on accumulated karma. Those with good karma are reborn in favorable circumstances, as humans in good situations, or even as gods in celestial realms. Those with bad karma are reborn in unfortunate circumstances, as animals, as humans in difficult situations, or in hell realms where they suffer until karma is exhausted. But this process can be interrupted. Souls can become stuck in the intermediate state for various reasons. Those who died suddenly, violently, or with strong attachments might not transition smoothly to rebirth. They become spirits, existing between incarnations, unable to move forward. Hindu tradition describes various types of spirits. Bhuta are ghosts of the dead who have not moved on to rebirth. The word Bhuta means being or existence and is a neutral term, but in supernatural context refers to spirits stuck between incarnations. Bhuta are created when someone dies improperly, through violence, suicide, accident, or without proper funeral rites. They are also created when someone dies with strong, unfulfilled desires or unresolved attachments. Bhuta exist in liminal state. They are no longer fully part of the living world, but have not yet been reborn. They haunt the places and people connected to their previous life. They can cause illness, madness, and misfortune to the living. They are driven by the desires and attachments that bind them to previous existence. Preta are hungry ghosts, similar to Chinese Gai and Buddhist concept of hungry ghosts. Preta are beings reborn in the hungry ghost realm as punishment for greed, attachment, and harmful behaviors in past lives. They have enormous stomachs but tiny throats, eternally hungry but unable to eat. They suffer terribly and can also afflict the living. Some Hindu texts distinguish between Bhuta as spirits stuck in transition and Preta as beings reborn in hungry ghost realm. Others use the terms interchangeably. The common element is spirits of the dead who suffer and who can cause problems for the living. Hindu funeral rites are designed to ensure the deceased transitions properly to rebirth and does not become troublesome spirit. The body is cremated as quickly as possible, ideally on the same day as death. Cremation releases the soul from the body and begins the transition process. The ashes are scattered in sacred river, preferably the Ganges, which further helps the soul's journey. After cremation, the family performs Shraddha ceremonies at specific intervals, on the 3rd, 10th, 11th, and 13th days after death, and then annually. These ceremonies involve offerings of food and water to the deceased, prayers and rituals performed by Brahmin priests. The offerings sustain the spirit during the transition period and help it move toward favorable rebirth. The Shraddha ceremonies reflect belief that the deceased requires assistance from the living during the intermediate state. The offerings provide sustenance. The prayers generate good karma that improves the circumstances of rebirth. The rituals complete the social and spiritual transition from living person to ancestor to reborn being. If these ceremonies are not performed, or if they are performed incorrectly, the deceased becomes troubled spirit. Without offerings, they hunger. Without prayers, they lack good karma for favorable rebirth. Without proper ritual, they remain confused and stuck. They then haunt their descendants, causing problems until the rituals are completed. Hindu tradition includes numerous methods for dealing with troublesome spirits. Tantric rituals can identify which spirit is causing problems, determine what it needs, and provide appropriate offerings and ceremonies to help it move on. Exorcism rituals can drive away malevolent spirits. Protective amulets and mantras can prevent spirit possession. Hindu temples often include shrines to local deities who protect against spirits. The goddess Kali, though primarily associated with destruction and transformation, is invoked for protection against ghosts and demons. Hanuman, the monkey god, is believed to protect against evil spirits. Bhairava, fierce manifestation of Shiva, guards against supernatural threats. Village Hinduism includes elaborate beliefs about local spirits and deities beyond the major gods of classical Hinduism. Each village has local spirits, often associated with specific trees, stones, or shrines. These might be deified ancestors, nature spirits, or other supernatural beings. They require regular offerings and worship. If neglected, they cause problems. This creates complex spiritual landscape where ghosts, ancestors, local spirits, minor deities, and major gods all coexist and require appropriate treatment. The boundaries between categories are fluid. A troubled ghost might be elevated to local deity through worship. An ancestor might become protective spirit. A malevolent spirit might be appeased and transformed. Buddhism, which originated within Hindu cultural context, shares concepts of karma and rebirth, but developed distinct ghost theology. Buddhist texts describe 6 realms of existence within samsara: God realm, demigod realm, human realm, animal realm, hungry ghost realm, and hell realm. Beings are reborn into these realms based on karma. The hungry ghost realm is one of the 3 lower realms, along with animal and hell realms. Beings reborn as hungry ghosts suffer from insatiable craving. They are depicted with huge bellies, thin necks, and tiny mouths. They can never satisfy their hunger. This realm is punishment for greed, stinginess, and compulsive craving in past lives. But Buddhism also recognizes spirits who are not in hungry ghost realm, but are rather stuck in transition between incarnations. These are similar to Hindu Bhuta, spirits who died suddenly or improperly and have not yet been reborn. These spirits suffer in intermediate state called bardo, wandering confused and frightened. Tibetan Buddhism has particularly developed understanding of bardo. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, properly called Bardo Thodol, or Liberation Through Hearing in the Intermediate State, is guide for the dying and the dead. It describes in detail what consciousness experiences after death as it navigates bardo before rebirth. According to Tibetan teachings, after death, consciousness experiences series of visions and encounters with peaceful and wrathful deities. These are not external beings, but projections of the dying person's own mind. If consciousness recognizes these visions as mental projections, it can achieve liberation from samsara entirely. If not, consciousness is pulled by karma toward rebirth. The process takes up to 49 days. During this time, the deceased's consciousness is vulnerable and confused. Living relatives perform ceremonies, read the Bardo Thodol aloud, so the consciousness can hear and be guided, make offerings, and generate merit that is dedicated to the deceased. These actions help consciousness navigate bardo successfully and achieve favorable rebirth. If the living fail to perform proper ceremonies, consciousness may become lost in bardo, eventually becoming earth-bound spirit that haunts the living. Tibetan tradition describes various types of troublesome spirits created when things go wrong in Bardo. These include spirits bound to their corpses, spirits attached to previous possessions, and spirits seeking revenge for how they died. Tibetan monks perform elaborate exorcism rituals to deal with troublesome spirits. These rituals identify the spirit, determine what it needs, make appropriate offerings, and perform ceremonies to help it complete the journey through Bardo to rebirth. The rituals combine compassion for the suffering spirit with firm direction to move on from the human realm. Japanese Buddhism, discussed earlier, developed its own unique ghost traditions. Zen Buddhism emphasizes that ghosts are products of attachment and delusion. If consciousness becomes attached to the world, to relationships, to life itself, it cannot let go at death. This attachment creates ghosts. The solution is to develop non-attachment through meditation and spiritual practice, so that at death, consciousness can let go peacefully. Southeast Asian Buddhism, particularly in Thailand, Myanmar, and Cambodia, merged Buddhist doctrine with local animist beliefs. The result is supernatural cosmology, where Buddhist hells and hungry ghost realm coexist with local spirits called Phai in Thailand or Nat in Myanmar. These spirits include ghosts of the dead alongside nature spirits and other beings. Thai Buddhism includes elaborate ceremonies for feeding hungry ghosts. During Phai Takon festival, massive quantities of food are offered to appease wandering spirits. Buddhist monks chant sutras to generate merit for the dead. The living perform rituals to protect against malevolent ghosts. This creates Buddhism that is simultaneously philosophical tradition, emphasizing liberation from suffering, and practical system for managing relationships with spirits. Hindu and Buddhist ghost beliefs emphasize the suffering of spirits. Ghosts are not simply scary or dangerous, they are pitiable. They are stuck in confused and painful state. The appropriate response is not fear or rejection, but compassion. The rituals to help ghosts are acts of mercy that benefit both the spirit and those who perform them. This compassionate approach distinguishes Hindu and Buddhist ghost traditions from Western traditions that emphasize banishing or destroying evil spirits. In Hindu and Buddhist view, spirits are suffering beings who need help. Helping them generates good karma for the living. It is religious duty to aid troubled spirits, not just practical response to haunting. The concept of karma creates different understanding of why ghosts exist. They are not punishment from God or demonic deception. They are natural consequence of dying with unresolved karma, strong attachments, or negative mental states. Anyone might become a ghost if they die under wrong circumstances. This makes ghosts less ontologically separate from the living and more reminder of what might happen if one does not prepare properly for death. Both traditions emphasize the importance of dying well. Meditation practice, moral behavior, non-attachment, and proper mental state at death all influence what happens afterward. Much of Buddhist practice is preparation for death. The goal is to face death with clear mind, free from attachment, so consciousness can navigate Bardo successfully or achieve liberation entirely. Hindu and Buddhist ghost beliefs are sophisticated theological systems that integrate concepts of karma, rebirth, intermediate states, and the nature of consciousness. They provide framework for understanding death, ghosts, and the relationship between living and dead that differs fundamentally from Western theistic traditions, while sharing some elements with Asian ancestor traditions. The medieval period in Europe saw ghost beliefs crystallize into literary and cultural forms that would influence Western ghost stories for centuries. Understanding medieval and Renaissance European ghost traditions requires examining both theology and popular culture, as the two interacted in complex ways. Chapter 8: Medieval and Renaissance Ghost Literature. Medieval Europe produced extensive ghost literature that documented beliefs, entertained audiences, and taught moral lessons. These stories appeared in chronicles, saints' lives, exemplar collections, and romances. They reveal how people understood ghosts and what function ghost stories served in medieval society. One major category was purgatorial ghost stories. These followed pattern established by Gregory the Great. Ghost appears from purgatory, describes its suffering, requests prayers or masses, and eventually reports being released to heaven. These stories reinforce church teaching about purgatory and encourage people to have masses said for deceased relatives. Caesarius of Heisterbach's Dialogue on Miracles, written around 1220, contains dozens of ghost stories. In one account, a monk dies and appears to his brother monks to describe his time in purgatory. He explains that he sees the face of God briefly, but then is pulled back into purgatory because his sins are not fully expiated. He begs for prayers and masses. After sufficient prayers, he appears again to say he has been released to heaven, and he thanks the monks for their help. These stories are formulaic, but formula served purpose. It taught people what to do if they encountered a ghost. Treat it with Christian charity. Ask what it needs. Provide requested prayers or masses, and help it reach heaven. This made ghosts less frightening by providing clear protocol for dealing with them. But medieval literature also contains wilder ghost stories that fit less neatly into church doctrine. William of Newburgh's History of English Affairs, written in the late 12th century, includes accounts of revenants, corpses that rise from graves to wander at night. In one story, a man buried at Melrose Abbey rises nightly and wanders the streets. The monks hear him. They arm themselves and keep watch. When the revenant appears, they strike it with an axe. It flees back to its grave. The next day, they exhume the body, find it has fresh axe wound, and burn it. Only then does the haunting end. This story cannot be explained by purgatorial theology. This is not a soul appearing from purgatory, but a physical corpse reanimating. The solution is not prayers, but burning the body. This reflects older pagan beliefs about the undead that persisted alongside Christian theology. Medieval chronicles record numerous similar accounts: bodies that refuse to decompose, corpses that swell and bloat, graves that emit sounds, bodies that bleed when touched by their murderer. These accounts suggest that medieval people believed death did not always completely separate soul from body. Some bodies retained animation or spiritual presence that required forceful elimination. The reasons for reanimation varied. Some revenants were excommunicants whose bodies could not rest in consecrated ground. Some were suicides who were denied proper burial. Some were the wicked whose evil prevented peaceful rest. Some were murder victims seeking justice. Whatever the cause, the revenant represented failure of death to be final. Medieval romance literature includes numerous ghosts. The ghost in medieval romance often delivers message, reveals secret, or sets hero on quest. In the Arthurian romances, ghosts of dead knights appear to living knights to offer guidance or warnings. These ghosts are not suffering in purgatory, but rather seem to exist in chivalric afterlife, where they maintain interest in earthly affairs. The Second Shepherd's Play, a 15th century English mystery play, includes comic scene where shepherds are frightened by what they think is a ghost, but is actually a thief pretending to be supernatural. This suggests ghost beliefs were so common they could be parodied for comedic effect. Medieval ghost beliefs were shaped by several factors beyond theology. The Black Death created unprecedented death toll. Entire villages were depopulated. Bodies were buried in mass graves without proper rites. People died so quickly that families could not perform traditional mourning. This created conditions medieval theology said would produce ghosts: improper death, improper burial, grieving relatives unable to provide proper ritual, Chronicles from the Plague Years report increased supernatural phenomena, spectral processions, voices heard in empty churches, figures seen in abandoned houses. Whether these were actual experiences, trauma responses, or simply increased attention to supernatural in time of crisis, they indicate that mass death intensified belief in the presence of the dead. The late medieval period also saw development of Ars Moriendi, the art of dying well. These were instructional texts teaching people how to prepare for death spiritually. They described the temptations dying people would face from demons and how to resist them. They explained what to do at deathbed to ensure good death. Good death meant dying in state of grace, confessed and shriven, with proper religious comfort. This would prevent the soul from becoming troubled ghost. The concern with dying well reveals anxiety about what happens if one dies badly. If good death is necessary to prevent becoming ghost, then sudden death, death in sin, death without confession, all create risk of restless spirit. This made death itself frightening beyond physical cessation. One could fail at dying and create spiritual catastrophe. The Protestant Reformation in the 16th century challenged Catholic ghost theology. Martin Luther and other reformers rejected purgatory as unbiblical. They argued that souls at death went immediately to heaven or hell with no intermediate state. This eliminated theological foundation for ghosts. If there was no purgatory, souls could not return from there. So what were ghosts? Protestant theologians revived Augustine's position. Apparent ghosts were either angels or demons, not souls of the dead. Any spirit claiming to be a dead person was demonic deception. This position dismissed Catholic ghost stories as superstition that supported false doctrine of purgatory. But lived experience of ghost encounters did not change because of theological reformation. People continued reporting seeing deceased relatives. Protestant authorities had to address these experiences. Some argued these were natural phenomena misinterpreted. Others allowed that God might send angels in form of deceased persons to deliver messages, but the official position remained that actual souls of the dead did not return. This created tension between official Protestant theology and popular belief. People wanted to believe their encounters with deceased loved ones were real. Protestant doctrine said they were demonic deception or imagination. This tension would increase over following centuries as Protestant cultures struggled to reconcile experiential ghost beliefs with theological skepticism. The Renaissance humanist movement brought classical ghost literature back into circulation. Educated Europeans read Pliny's haunted house story, Lucan's necromancy scene, and classical Greek ghost tales. These stories came from respectable ancient sources and treated ghosts as real phenomena worth investigating. Renaissance literature incorporated classical ghost motifs. Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus includes ghost of Helen of Troy summoned by magic. The ghost is classical literary illusion, demonic conjuration, and object of desire simultaneously. The play merges medieval morality with classical learning and creates ambiguous status for spirits. Are they real, allegorical, or psychological? William Shakespeare created the most famous ghost in Western literature, the ghost of Hamlet's father. This ghost appears in Act 1 and provides the impetus for the entire plot. It claims to be the spirit of Hamlet's father, murdered by his brother. It demands vengeance. It describes its suffering in purgatory. It provides information only the dead king would know. But the play leaves ambiguous whether the ghost is truly Hamlet's father's spirit or a demon impersonating him. Hamlet himself questions the ghost's nature. The spirit that I have seen may be the devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape. This reflects Protestant theological concern that apparent ghosts are demonic deception. The ghost's description of purgatory, doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined to fast in fires, till the foul crimes done, in my days of nature are burnt and purged away, is Catholic theology. But Shakespeare wrote in Protestant England, where purgatory was rejected as papist error. The ghost thus embodies theological controversy. Catholics would see it as genuine spirit from purgatory, Protestants as demon confirming the evil of Catholic superstition. Hamlet never definitively resolves whether the ghost is real. This ambiguity is central to the play's exploration of uncertainty, madness, and the difficulty of knowing truth. The ghost might be real, it might be demonic deception, it might be Hamlet's projection of his own suspicions. The play allows all interpretations simultaneously. Shakespeare included ghosts in numerous other plays. Julius Caesar's ghost appears to Brutus. Richard III is haunted by the ghosts of those he murdered. Macbeth sees the ghost of Banquo at the feast. These ghosts serve dramatic and psychological functions. They manifest guilt, foreshadow doom, and create spectacle. But they also reflect early modern ghost beliefs that were becoming increasingly ambiguous and contested. The Renaissance and Reformation created crisis in ghost beliefs. Catholic theology allowed souls from purgatory to return. Protestant theology denied this. Classical literature treated ghosts as real. Skeptical humanism questioned supernatural phenomena. Personal experience suggested ghosts were real. Theological doctrine said they were not. This tension would only intensify during the Enlightenment, when natural philosophy began demanding empirical evidence for supernatural claims. But before examining Enlightenment skepticism, we must understand how ghosts functioned in early modern popular culture, particularly in broadside ballads, chapbooks, and witch trial testimonies, where ghost beliefs remained vibrant regardless of theological debates. Chapter 9: Early Modern Ghosts and the Rise of Skepticism. The 16th and 17th centuries saw explosion of ghost literature in popular culture, even as educated elites became increasingly skeptical. Cheap printed materials, broadside ballads, chapbooks, pamphlets, circulated ghost stories to mass audience. These stories reflected beliefs of common people rather than theological sophistication of clerics. Broadsides were single sheets printed on one side, often illustrated, containing ballad or story. Many broadsides from this period tell ghost stories. A typical ghost broadside would describe a murder, often domestic, husband killing wife, parent killing child, master killing servant. The victim's ghost appears to reveal the crime. The murderer is discovered and punished. Justice is served through supernatural intervention. These stories served social function. They reassured readers that murder could not go unpunished because ghosts would reveal it. They reinforced moral values about family, violence, and justice. They provided entertainment that combined horror, morality, and satisfaction of seeing evil punished. The ghost was a literary device that made invisible crimes visible and ensured cosmic justice. The ghost stories in broadsides follow consistent pattern. Someone is murdered secretly, the body is hidden, the crime seems perfect, but the ghost appears to a living person and reveals what happened. Often, the ghost appears in dreams. Sometimes it manifests visibly. It provides specific information about the murder that the living witness could not have known. This evidence leads to discovery of the body, arrest of the murderer, and execution. The ghost then rests peacefully. This narrative structure reflects beliefs about what ghosts are and what they do. Ghosts are murdered victims. They exist because of injustice. They want the truth revealed and their murderers punished. They will haunt until justice is achieved. Once justice is done, they depart. This is very different from purgatorial ghosts seeking prayers or revenants rising from graves. This is ghost as agent of justice. Legal history contains cases where ghost testimony was actually presented in court. The famous case of James Huxley in England in 1662 involved a man appearing in another man's dream, claiming to have been murdered by Huxley, and directing the dreamer to where the body was hidden. The body was found where the ghost indicated. Huxley was arrested, tried, and hanged based partly on this ghost testimony. Whether judges actually believed ghosts provided evidence, or whether the ghost story was convenient framework for presenting information obtained by other means is unclear. But the fact that such cases occurred shows how seriously ghost beliefs were taken in early modern legal culture. Witch trial testimonies from the 16th and 17th centuries frequently include encounters with ghosts or spirits. Accused witches were said to see spirits of the dead. Witnesses reported seeing the accused speaking with invisible beings. The boundary between ghosts, demons, and familiars was fluid in witch trial testimony. Many witch trial accounts describe the accused meeting the devil, who often appeared in form of a dead person or accompanied by spirits of the dead. This reflects Protestant belief that ghosts were demonic rather than actual souls of the dead. If someone saw a ghost, Protestant authorities interpreted this as encountering a demon. If that person was then accused of witchcraft, the ghost sighting became evidence of diabolic pact. But witch trial testimonies also reveal that common people continued believing in ghosts as spirits of the dead. Witnesses would describe seeing ghosts and interpret them as deceased relatives or neighbors. The learned authorities would reinterpret these as demons. This created disconnect between popular belief and elite theological interpretation. The 17th century also saw beginning of organized skepticism toward ghosts. Francis Bacon, writing in the early 1600s, dismissed ghost sightings as products of imagination, disease, or deliberate fraud. He argued that natural philosophy should investigate claims through empirical evidence rather than accept traditional beliefs. Thomas Hobbes in Leviathan, 1651, argued that ghosts did not exist. What people called ghosts were either misperceived natural phenomena or deliberate tricks. He suggested that ghost beliefs were encouraged by clergy to maintain power through fear of supernatural punishment. Reginald Scott's The Discovery of Witchcraft, 1584, included extensive criticism of ghost beliefs. Scott argued that many apparent ghost sightings were caused by mental illness, dreams misinterpreted as reality, or fraud. He documented various tricks used to fake ghost apparitions, exposing how supposed hauntings could be manufactured. But skeptical texts provoked defenses of ghost beliefs. Joseph Glanville's Sadducismus Triumphatus, 1681, collected accounts of authenticated ghost sightings and other supernatural phenomena. Glanville argued that dismissing all supernatural claims led to atheism. If ghosts and witchcraft did not exist, then spirits did not exist, which undermined belief in the soul and in God. Glanville saw defending ghost beliefs as defending religion itself. This debate, skeptics dismissing ghosts as superstition versus defenders arguing ghosts proved the spiritual realm existed, would continue for next 3 centuries. The Enlightenment would intensify skepticism. The 19th century would see spiritualism attempt to scientifically prove ghosts. The 20th century would bring parapsychology and scientific ghost hunting. But the core debate remained. Were ghosts real phenomena requiring explanation, or cultural beliefs requiring debunking? The early modern period also saw ghosts begin appearing in secular entertainment rather than religious or moral contexts. Puppet shows featured ghosts. Fairground attractions created fake haunted houses. Ghost stories became parlor entertainment told to frightened audiences. This commercialization and entertainment use of ghosts marked shift from ghosts as theological or moral concern to ghosts as cultural product. But the most significant development of the early modern period was documentation of numerous detailed ghost accounts. Whereas medieval ghost stories were often formulaic and served obvious religious functions, Early modern accounts were more varied, detailed, and ambiguous. They described specific ghosts with individual characteristics, motivations, and behaviors. The drummer of Tedworth is one famous case. In 1661, a house in Tedworth, England, was plagued by mysterious drumming sounds, moving objects, and other disturbances. The phenomena continued for years, were witnessed by numerous people, and were documented by Joseph Glanville. The case became famous and was cited in ghost belief debates for decades. Skeptics suggested various natural explanations or accused the family of fraud. Believers argued the witnesses were credible and the phenomena inexplicable by natural means. The Epworth Rectory case in the 1720s involved the Wesley family. John Wesley, who founded Methodism, was a child during these events. The family home was troubled by knocking sounds, footsteps, and apparitions. Multiple family members, servants, and visitors witnessed the phenomena over several months. John Wesley's mother, Susanna, documented the events carefully. The case remained unexplained and became part of Methodist tradition as evidence of the spiritual realm. These detailed cases differed from medieval ghost stories by including multiple witnesses, extended duration, careful documentation, and resistance to simple explanation. They suggested that whatever ghosts were, they were complex phenomena not easily reduced to purgatorial theology or demonic deception. The early modern period created the template for modern ghost stories, detailed accounts of specific hauntings, debates over whether they were real or fake, attempts at natural and supernatural explanation, and treatment of ghosts as mysteries to be investigated rather than simply believed or dismissed. This investigative approach to ghosts would culminate in Victorian spiritualism and 20th century parapsychology. But it also created market for ghost stories as entertainment. By the 18th century, Gothic literature would develop as genre, using ghosts and supernatural horror for artistic and commercial purposes. This marked complete transformation of ghosts from religious concern to cultural product, from theological doctrine to literary device. The Enlightenment and scientific revolution of the 17th and 18th centuries challenged supernatural beliefs fundamentally. How did ghost beliefs survive and adapt to new emphasis on reason, empiricism, and natural explanation? The answer involves complex negotiation between traditional belief, personal experience, and new scientific frameworks. Chapter 10: The Enlightenment and Rational Ghosts. The Enlightenment elevated reason and empiricism as primary sources of knowledge. Superstition was to be replaced by science. Faith was to be constrained by reason. Traditional beliefs required examination through rational criteria. This intellectual movement created fundamental challenge to ghost beliefs. David Hume's essay Of Miracles, 1748, argued that no testimony was sufficient to establish a miracle unless its falsehood would be more miraculous than the event it described. Applied to ghost sightings, Hume suggested it was always more likely that witnesses were mistaken, lying, or deluded than that ghosts actually existed. He did not definitively prove ghosts did not exist, but he established high evidentiary bar for accepting supernatural claims. Voltaire mocked ghost beliefs as examples of superstition that enlightened people should reject. He suggested that ghost stories were tools priests used to control ignorant masses through fear. Enlightenment through reason would eliminate such superstitions. But ghost beliefs did not disappear during the Enlightenment. Instead, they adapted. Some Enlightenment thinkers attempted to explain ghosts through natural philosophy. Perhaps ghosts were real phenomena with natural explanations not yet discovered. Perhaps they were manifestations of unknown natural forces, electricity, magnetism, or subtle fluids. Others argued that ghosts were psychological phenomena. Perhaps ghost sightings resulted from imagination, dreams, hallucinations, or mental illness. This naturalized ghosts. They were real experiences, but were internal, rather than external phenomena. The ghost was in the mind of the perceiver rather than in the environment. Samuel Johnson, the famous English writer and dictionary compiler, defended belief in ghosts on empirical grounds. When his biographer Boswell expressed skepticism, Johnson responded, "All argument is against it, but all belief is for it." He noted that people across all times and cultures reported seeing ghosts. This universal testimony suggested something real was occurring, even if the explanation remained unclear. Johnson also argued for methodological openness. Rather than dismissing all ghost reports as impossible, investigators should examine them carefully, determine which were credible, and seek explanations. Some might be fraud or misperception, but if credible witnesses reported phenomena they could not explain, this demanded investigation rather than dismissal. This approach anticipated later parapsychology. Rather than arguing all ghost claims were either completely true or completely false, it suggested careful case-by-case examination, weighing evidence, and remaining open to unusual phenomena while maintaining critical rigor. The 18th century saw numerous ghost investigations conducted with Enlightenment principles. When haunting was reported, investigators would visit the location, interview witnesses, examine the site, and attempt to determine whether fraud or natural causes could explain the phenomena. Many hauntings were exposed as fraud, people creating sounds and appearances to frighten others, often for profit. But some cases resisted easy explanation. The Cock Lane ghost in 1762 became a famous example. A house in London was said to be haunted by the ghost of a dead woman who communicated through knocking sounds. Crowds gathered outside the house. Investigations were conducted by notable figures, including Samuel Johnson. Eventually, the haunting was exposed as fraud. The sounds were created by an 11-year-old girl using a wooden board to make knocking. But before exposure, many credible people had witnessed the phenomena and believed it supernatural. This case illustrated several important points. Fraud was common and required investigation. Even educated people could be fooled. But exposure of one fraud did not prove all ghost claims were fraudulent. Each case required individual assessment, and the public appetite for ghost stories remained enormous despite Enlightenment skepticism. The 18th century also saw development of Gothic literature as genre. Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, 1764, is considered the first Gothic novel. It features ancient castle, family curse, mysterious deaths, and giant ghostly figure. The novel established conventions of Gothic horror, medieval settings, supernatural events, atmosphere of dread, and exploration of psychological terror. Gothic literature treated ghosts as literary devices rather than theological realities. The ghosts in Gothic novels served narrative functions, creating suspense, symbolizing guilt or past sins, representing return of repressed history. Whether the ghosts were real within the story was often left ambiguous. This ambiguity allowed Gothic literature to explore ghost themes without committing to belief or disbelief. Anne Radcliffe's Gothic novels of the 1790s pioneered the explained supernatural, where apparently supernatural events are revealed to have natural explanations. A ghost turns out to be a living person in disguise. Mysterious sounds are caused by hidden mechanisms. This technique satisfied Enlightenment rationalism. The supernatural is explained away, while providing Gothic thrills. But Radcliffe's contemporary Matthew Lewis wrote The Monk, 1796, which included genuinely supernatural elements, including a demon and spirits of the dead. This Gothic novel embraced the supernatural rather than explaining it away. The debate between explained and genuine supernatural ghosts mirrored larger cultural debate about whether ghosts were real or imaginary. Gothic literature was extraordinarily popular. It was also controversial. Critics attacked it as encouraging superstition and corrupting readers' morals with sensational content. Defenders argued it was harmless entertainment and explored important psychological themes. But regardless of critical opinion, the public consumed Gothic ghost stories voraciously. This commercialization of ghosts was significant. Ghosts had moved from religious concern to folklore to entertainment product. Ghost stories could be manufactured for profit. Publishers commissioned them. Authors wrote them to market demand. Audiences consumed them eagerly. Ghosts became commodified cultural product. But commodification did not eliminate genuine belief. Many people simultaneously enjoyed Gothic ghost fiction and believed in actual ghosts. Fiction and reality existed in complex relationship. Fiction drew on folklore and actual ghost beliefs for material. Actual ghost beliefs were influenced by fiction, with people interpreting their experiences through fictional frameworks. The late Enlightenment also saw beginnings of modern psychology and study of perception. Investigations into optical illusions, hallucinations, and the nature of consciousness suggested that human perception was unreliable. What we see and hear does not always correspond to objective reality. This provided new framework for explaining ghost sightings. They were perceptual errors or psychological phenomena rather than objective events. But this psychological explanation, while naturalistic, took ghost experiences seriously as phenomena requiring explanation. Rather than dismissing ghost witnesses as liars or fools, it suggested they were experiencing genuine perceptual events that had internal rather than external causes. The ghost was real as experience, even if not real as external entity. The Enlightenment thus did not eliminate ghosts, but transformed them. Ghosts became phenomena to be investigated, psychological experiences to be explained, literary devices to be exploited, and cultural products to be consumed. Traditional theological frameworks faded, but ghosts persisted in new forms adapted to modern context. The 19th century would see this transformation continue and intensify. Victorian spiritualism would attempt to scientifically prove ghosts existed. Ghost stories would become major literary genre. Photography would claim to capture ghosts on film. And the modern skeptical believer debate would crystallize into forms still recognizable today. Chapter 11: Victorian Spiritualism and the Scientific Ghost. The 19th century witnessed the most remarkable attempt to reconcile ghost beliefs with scientific method. The spiritualism movement claimed that the dead could communicate with the living through mediums, that this communication could be demonstrated under controlled conditions, and that science would eventually prove survival after death. Spiritualism began in 1848 in Hydesville, New York, when sisters Kate and Margaret Fox reported mysterious knocking sounds in their home. The sounds responded to questions: 1 knock for no, 2 for yes. The sisters claimed they were communicating with the spirit of a murdered peddler whose body was buried in the cellar. The story became a sensation. Public seances featuring the Fox sisters drew large audiences. The spirits would answer questions through knocks. Objects would move apparently by themselves. The phenomena seemed to provide empirical evidence that the dead could communicate with the living. Spiritualism spread rapidly through America and Europe. Seances became a cultural phenomenon. Mediums claimed ability to contact the dead. Sitters attended seances hoping to receive messages from deceased relatives. The standard seance involved participants sitting around a table in darkness or dim light while the medium entered trance state. Spirits would communicate through various means: knocking, table tilting, direct voice, automatic writing, or materialization. Table tilting or table rapping was common. The table would lift, tilt, or rock apparently by itself while participants touched it lightly. Knocks would sound from the table in response to questions. Skeptics argued participants were moving the table unconsciously or deliberately. Believers insisted the force was supernatural. Automatic writing involved the medium's handwriting messages while in trance, supposedly controlled by spirits. The writing sometimes revealed information the medium could not have known by normal means. This was cited as evidence of genuine spirit communication. Skeptics countered that the information could have been obtained through prior investigation or lucky guessing, and that the writing came from the medium's subconscious rather than external spirits. Physical mediumship produced more dramatic phenomena. Objects flew across rooms, musical instruments played by themselves. Ectoplasm, a mysterious substance supposedly composed of spirit matter, oozed from mediums' bodies and formed into shapes. Spirit hands materialized and touched sitters. Full-body apparitions appeared. These phenomena were often exposed as fraud. Investigators caught mediums using hidden accomplices, concealed mechanical devices, and clever tricks to create apparently supernatural effects. Ectoplasm was exposed as cheesecloth or other mundane materials. Spirit hands were fake rubber hands, or the medium's own hands freed from false restraints. But exposure of fraud did not end spiritualism. Believers argued that some fraudulent mediums did not prove all were fraudulent. Some phenomena resisted naturalistic explanation even after careful investigation. And the emotional power of apparently receiving messages from deceased loved ones was too significant to be dismissed simply because some mediums were charlatans. Victorian spiritualism attracted people from all social classes, but was particularly popular among educated middle and upper classes. Scientists, physicians, lawyers, and other professionals attended seances and investigated mediums. Many remained skeptical. Others became convinced that genuine phenomena occurred that science could not yet explain. The Society for Psychical Research was founded in London in 1882 by scientists and scholars to investigate paranormal claims, including spirit communication. The society brought scientific methodology to ghost investigation. Members conducted careful experiments, documented results, and published findings in scholarly journals. The goal was to determine whether paranormal phenomena were real, and if so, to understand them scientifically. The society investigated famous mediums, documented cases of apparitions, collected accounts of crisis apparitions, ghosts seen at moment of death by people unaware the person had died, and attempted to determine whether telepathy or survival after death could be demonstrated empirically. Their work was sophisticated. They were aware of fraud and actively tried to detect it. They used control conditions, multiple witnesses, and careful documentation. They were not credulous believers, but rather curious investigators, willing to consider the possibility that current scientific understanding was incomplete. Some investigations produced results that seemed to support paranormal claims. The cross-correspondences were a series of automatic writings produced by multiple mediums over several years that seemed to contain coordinated messages that no individual medium could have created alone. This suggested either genuine spirit communication or remarkable unconscious telepathy among the mediums. Census of hallucinations conducted in 1894 surveyed over 17,000 people about whether they had experienced apparitions. About 10% reported seeing apparitions, many of which seemed to be crisis apparitions coinciding with deaths or emergencies. The statistical analysis suggested that more apparitions occurred at time of crisis than chance would predict, supporting the idea that some apparitions conveyed real information. But skeptical researchers pointed to methodological problems in these studies. Memory was unreliable. People might misremember timing of apparitions. Selection bias affected who responded to surveys. Fraud remained possible even in controlled conditions. The evidence was suggestive, but not definitive. The debate over spiritualism became increasingly technical and acrimonious. Believers accused skeptics of closed-minded prejudice against anything supernatural. skeptics accused believers of credulity and motivated reasoning. Both sides claimed science supported their position. Victorian ghost photography added new dimension to the debate. In the 1860s, spirit photography emerged. Photographers claimed to accidentally or deliberately capture images of ghosts alongside living subjects. The ghosts appeared as transparent figures, often recognizable as deceased relatives of the living subjects. These photographs created sensation. They seemed to provide objective evidence of ghosts. The camera was mechanical and objective. It could not be fooled by imagination or wishful thinking. If ghosts appeared in photographs, they must be real. But photographers quickly demonstrated that spirit photographs could be faked through double exposure, multiple exposures, and other darkroom tricks. Most spirit photographs were deliberate fraud. The photographers charged high prices for sittings that captured the ghosts of clients' deceased loved ones. Yet some photographs resisted easy explanation. Some were produced by amateur photographers who had no obvious motive for fraud. Some showed details that seemed to match the appearance of deceased persons the photographer could not have known. The debate over spirit photography paralleled the debate over mediumship. Fraud was common, but did not necessarily explain every case. The late Victorian period also saw flourishing of ghost story literature. Writers including M.R. James, Henry James, Edith Wharton, and others produced sophisticated ghost stories that explored psychological horror rather than crude supernatural terror. These literary ghosts were often ambiguous. Were they real spirits or psychological projections? The ambiguity created more effective horror than definitive supernatural explanation. M.R. James's ghost stories, collected in Ghost Stories of an Antiquarian, 1904, and later volumes, established modern ghost story conventions. James's ghosts were usually malevolent spirits disturbed by human actions. They appeared to scholars or antiquarians who unwittingly transgressed boundaries. The stories combined scholarly detail with genuine horror and left the supernatural unexplained. Henry James's The Turn of the Screw, 1898, became the most famous, ambiguous ghost story. The narrator sees ghosts of dead servants who seem to corrupt the children in her care. But the story leaves ambiguous whether the ghosts are real or whether the narrator is mad. Critics have debated for over a century whether this is ghost story or psychological study of delusion. The ambiguity makes it more disturbing than definitive answer would. Victorian culture thus had contradictory relationship with ghosts. Seances attempted to scientifically prove spirits existed. Ghost stories proliferated as entertainment. Public skepticism toward crude supernatural claims increased, but personal ghost experiences and desire for contact with the dead remained powerful. This tension created productive cultural space where ghosts could be simultaneously believed and doubted, investigated and enjoyed. The Victorian spiritualist movement eventually declined. Too many frauds were exposed. Scientific investigation failed to provide definitive proof of survival. The emotional intensity of the movement dissipated, but it left important legacy. The idea that ghosts could be investigated scientifically, that personal experience of the supernatural was worth taking seriously, even if explanation remained elusive, and that ghosts occupied ambiguous space between objective reality and subjective experience. The 20th century would inherit these tensions and attempt to resolve them through modern parapsychology, skeptical investigation, and sophisticated ghost hunting using electronic equipment. But the fundamental questions remained the same. Were ghosts real? And if so, what were they? Chapter 12. The Modern Ghost. Haunted Houses and Famous Cases. The 20th century saw ghost beliefs persist despite increasing secularization and scientific authority. But modern ghosts differed from their predecessors. They were less theological and more psychological. They were investigated with technology rather than prayer. They appeared in new media, films, television, recordings, and were debated in new forums. Certain haunted locations became internationally famous, attracting tourists, investigators, and media attention. These locations established modern template for how hauntings are understood and presented. Borley Rectory in England, investigated extensively in the 1930s and 40s, was called the most haunted house in England. The Victorian Rectory reportedly experienced numerous phenomena: phantom footsteps, mysterious lights, apparitions of a nun and a coach, objects moving on their own, mysterious messages appearing on walls. Psychical researcher Harry Price conducted investigations and documented the phenomena extensively. Price's investigation was controversial. He claimed to have witnessed genuine phenomena. He published books detailing his findings. But critics accused him of exaggerating, manufacturing evidence, and being too credulous. Later investigators suggested much of the haunting was created by hoaxers, and that Price himself may have perpetrated some phenomena to maintain public interest. The Borley case illustrates modern haunted house template: dramatic claims of haunting, extensive investigation, media attention, controversy over whether phenomena are real, accusations of fraud, and uncertainty about what actually occurred. This pattern would repeat in numerous famous haunted locations. The Amityville horror case in 1975 became most famous American haunted house story. The Lutz family moved into a house where a mass murder had occurred. They reported terrifying phenomena: voices, moving objects, strange odors, cold spots, and demonic apparitions. They fled after 28 days. Their story became a best-selling book and successful horror film. Investigators quickly disputed the Lutz's account. Paranormal researchers found no evidence of haunting. The Lutz's attorney later stated the entire story was fabricated. Family members made contradictory statements. Evidence suggested the haunting was hoax created for book deal, but the Lutz's maintained their story was true, and believers defended the case against skeptics. The Amityville controversy became template for many subsequent haunted house claims. Dramatic story gains media attention. Investigators cannot confirm phenomena. Evidence of fabrication emerges. Believers and skeptics argue inconclusively. The Amityville house became tourist attraction, and numerous films exploited the story regardless of its truth. The Enfield poltergeist in England in the late 1970s was one of the best documented modern hauntings. A family experienced furniture moving, knocking sounds, objects levitating, and children being thrown from beds by invisible force. Investigators witnessed some phenomena. Police officers saw chairs moving. Recordings captured voices. Photographs seemed to show levitation. But skeptical investigators caught the children faking some phenomena. The children admitted to occasionally faking events. Believers argued that some faking did not prove all phenomena were faked, and that the children may have faked occasionally because genuine phenomena had ceased and they wanted attention to continue. Skeptics argued that once faker admitted, all testimony became unreliable. The Enfield case is important because it shows how even extensively documented modern haunting with multiple witnesses, photographs, and recordings can remain ambiguous. No definitive proof emerged either that genuine paranormal phenomena occurred or that everything was faked. Modern ghost investigation developed technological approach. Ghost hunters use electromagnetic field detectors, believing ghosts affect electromagnetic fields. They use digital thermometers to detect cold spots, supposedly caused by ghosts drawing energy from environment. They use digital audio recorders to capture electronic voice phenomena, or EVP, which are sounds not heard during recording but appearing on playback, interpreted as spirit voices. These methods claim to objectively detect ghosts using instruments rather than relying on subjective experience. But critics point out that electromagnetic fields can be caused by faulty wiring, cold spots by drafts, and EVP by audio artifacts. The instruments detect something, but whether that something is ghosts remains disputed. Television shows popularized modern ghost hunting. Shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Most Haunted presented investigations of allegedly haunted locations using technology. These shows followed format: investigate haunted location, use equipment to detect anomalies, capture apparent evidence on camera, conclude that evidence suggests possible paranormal activity. These shows were entertainment rather than serious investigation. They were edited to emphasize drama and scary moments. Evidence was presented without rigorous analysis. Commercial breaks created artificial suspense. But they popularized the idea that ghosts could be investigated scientifically using technology. The shows also established modern ghost hunting as leisure activity. Amateur ghost hunting groups formed, purchasing equipment and investigating local haunted locations. This democratized paranormal investigation. Anyone with equipment could become ghost hunter. But it also lowered standards for what counted as evidence. Skeptical organizations like the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry investigated paranormal claims and generally concluded that proposed evidence for ghosts could be explained by natural causes, misperception, or fraud. Skeptical investigators argue that after centuries of ghost claims, no definitive evidence has been produced. If ghosts were real, surely by now science would have confirmed it. But believers counter that absence of proof is not proof of absence. Science may simply lack the proper framework to detect or understand ghosts. Personal experience of millions of people who report encountering ghosts cannot all be dismissed as delusion, and some cases remain genuinely unexplained even after skeptical investigation. The modern debate thus continues along familiar lines established centuries ago. Believers cite personal experience and cases that resist easy explanation. Skeptics demand reproducible evidence and note that every supposed ghost can potentially be explained by natural causes. Neither side convinces the other. Modern ghosts also appear in new contexts. Electronic voice phenomena supposedly allow ghosts to communicate through electronic devices. Spirit boxes rapidly scan radio frequencies, and investigators interpret fragments of broadcast as spirit messages. Phone calls from the dead allegedly occur. People report receiving calls from deceased relatives. Ghosts supposedly appear in digital photographs, videos, and live streams. These technological hauntings reflect modern belief that ghosts adapt to new technology. If ghosts can affect electromagnetic fields, they can affect electronics. If they could once communicate through knocks and table tilts, they can now communicate through radios and phones. This updates ghost beliefs for technological age while maintaining core concepts. Famous haunted locations continue attracting tourists. The Tower of London, advertised as haunted by Anne Boleyn and other executed prisoners. Gettysburg Battlefield, said to be haunted by soldiers who died there. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in Illinois, called one of the most haunted cemeteries in America. These locations market their ghost stories to tourists who want to experience hauntings. Ghost tours operate in cities worldwide, taking paying customers to locations of famous murders, executions, or disasters, and telling ghost stories associated with them. This commercializes ghosts completely. They are tourist attractions, entertainment products, marketing tools. The economic value of ghost stories exceeds any question of whether ghosts are real. Modern ghosts appear constantly in entertainment media. Ghost movies, a major genre with numerous subgenres. Gothic ghosts, revenge ghosts, tragic ghosts, demonic ghosts, comedic ghosts. Television shows feature ghosts as main characters, plot devices, or background elements. Video games include ghosts as enemies, allies, or playable characters. Ghosts permeate modern culture at every level. Yet belief in actual ghosts remains widespread. Surveys consistently show that large percentages of populations report believing in ghosts and report personal ghost experiences. In the United States, polls suggest 30 to 45% of people believe in ghosts. In the United Kingdom, similar percentages believe. Ghost belief is not fringe position, but mainstream. This creates a apparent paradox. Modern scientific culture officially rejects supernatural explanations. Yet vast numbers of people believe in ghosts. They report seeing ghosts, experiencing hauntings, and using ghost beliefs to make sense of their experiences. How is this possible? The answer lies in how people understand ghosts in modern context. Many believers do not think of ghosts as violating natural law, but rather as natural phenomena science has not yet explained. They accept scientific authority, but believe science is incomplete. Ghosts exist within nature, not outside it, and someday science will understand them. Others hold ghost beliefs separate from scientific knowledge. They accept that science cannot measure or detect ghosts, but trust their personal experience. They believe scientific method is inadequate for investigating subjective phenomena like ghost encounters. They maintain two frameworks: scientific for most things, experiential for ghosts. Still others enjoy ghost stories and ghost hunting as entertainment without firmly believing in ghosts. They participate in ghost tours, watch ghost hunting shows, and tell ghost stories while remaining agnostic about whether ghosts are real. The cultural performance of ghost belief can exist independent of actual belief. Modern ghosts thus serve multiple functions. They are potential objects of scientific investigation. They are entertainment products. They are frameworks for making sense of unusual experiences. They are cultural traditions connecting past and present. They are tourist attractions. They are ways of maintaining connection with the dead. They are all of these simultaneously. The persistence of ghost beliefs, despite scientific skepticism, despite exposure of countless frauds, despite lack of definitive evidence, suggests that ghosts serve important psychological and cultural functions that transcend questions of objective reality. Understanding why ghosts persist requires examining what psychological needs ghost beliefs fulfill. Chapter 13. The Psychology of Ghost Experiences. Why do people report seeing ghosts? Why do ghost beliefs persist across cultures and centuries? Modern psychology and neuroscience offer frameworks for understanding ghost experiences without requiring that ghosts objectively exist. Sleep paralysis is one well-documented phenomenon that creates ghost-like experiences. Sleep paralysis occurs when a person wakes during REM sleep but remains temporarily unable to move. The experience is terrifying. The person is conscious and aware but paralyzed. This is often accompanied by a sense of presence, feeling that someone or something is in the room. Visual and auditory hallucinations can occur. Many people report seeing figures standing over them, feeling weight on their chest, or hearing voices. These experiences have been interpreted as ghost encounters across cultures and throughout history. The medieval incubus, a demon that sits on sleeping people's chests. The mare in Germanic folklore, a spirit that causes nightmares. The old hag in Newfoundland tradition, a witch who attacks sleepers. Modern alien abduction accounts describing paralysis and presence of beings. All of these may be cultural interpretations of sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is common. Perhaps 40% of people experience it at least once. It occurs when the brain transitions between sleep and waking improperly. The neuroscience is understood. Yet the experience is so powerful that even people who know about sleep paralysis can be convinced they encountered something supernatural when it happens to them. Pareidolia is the tendency of human perception to recognize patterns, especially faces, in random stimuli. We see faces in clouds, in wood grain, in toast. This occurs because human brains are evolved to quickly recognize faces and other meaningful patterns. False positives, seeing faces that are not there, are less costly evolutionarily than false negatives, failing to recognize faces that are there. This tendency explains many ghost photographs and sightings. A pattern of light and shadow can be perceived as a human figure. A smudge on a photograph can look like a face. The brain fills in details, transforming ambiguous input into coherent image of a person. The person genuinely sees the figure. It is not deliberate fabrication, but the figure exists in their perception rather than in external reality. Infrasound, sound below the range of human hearing, has been shown to create feelings of unease, fear, and presence. It can cause visual disturbances. Some reportedly haunted locations have been found to have high levels of infrasound caused by wind, ventilation systems, or structural vibrations. People experiencing these effects might interpret them as ghostly presence. Carbon monoxide poisoning causes hallucinations, feelings of presence, and irrational fear. Some famous hauntings have been linked to carbon monoxide from faulty heating systems. The residents genuinely experienced phenomena, but the cause was toxic gas rather than spirits. Electromagnetic fields have been studied as potential cause of ghost experiences. Some research suggests that electromagnetic fields can affect the temporal lobe of the brain, creating feelings of presence, religious experiences, and unusual perceptions. Haunted locations often have unusual electromagnetic fields from faulty wiring or proximity to power sources, but the research remains controversial and findings are not consistently replicated. These physiological explanations do not necessarily disprove ghosts, but they show that ghost-like experiences can be produced by natural causes affecting the brain. The experiences are real. The person genuinely sees, hears, or feels something. But the cause is internal rather than external. Psychological factors also contribute to ghost experiences. Bereavement hallucinations are common among grieving people. After someone dies, their loved ones frequently report seeing, hearing, or feeling the presence of the deceased. These experiences can be comforting, helping the bereaved process grief and maintain connection with the dead. The experiences are sometimes interpreted as actual ghost encounters, other times as psychological phenomena. Research shows that bereavement hallucinations occur in 30 to 60% of widowed people. They can occur in any sensory modality: visual, auditory, tactile, olfactory. They can be momentary or prolonged. They are generally positive experiences that reduce grief intensity. From psychological perspective, these experiences serve important functions. They allow gradual emotional separation from the deceased rather than abrupt severance. They provide comfort during difficult time. They maintain symbolic presence of the dead in the life of the bereaved. Whether the deceased is really appearing, or whether the experience is psychological projection, becomes less important than the function it serves. Expectation and suggestion powerfully shape perception. If people expect to see ghosts, they are more likely to interpret ambiguous stimuli as ghosts. If they visit an allegedly haunted location, they will be primed to perceive supernatural phenomena. Their heightened anxiety and attention will make them notice things they would ordinarily ignore. Their expectations will shape interpretation of those perceptions. Experimental research demonstrates this. When people are told a location is haunted, they report more anomalous experiences than when told it is not haunted, even though conditions are identical. When subtle cues are introduced suggesting ghostly presence, people report seeing shadows, feeling presences, and experiencing fear, even when no unusual phenomena are actually occurring. This does not mean ghost experiences are all expectation-based, but it shows that expectation contributes to how ambiguous experiences are interpreted. The same experience might be interpreted as ghost in one context and ignored in another context depending on expectations. Memory is unreliable and reconstructive. People misremember details, incorporate information learned after an event into memory of the event, and gradually alter memories over time. A ghost story told and retold becomes more dramatic and detailed with each telling. An ambiguous experience remembered later becomes more clearly supernatural as memory reconstructs it to fit narrative expectations. This is not deliberate fabrication. This is how memory works. People genuinely remember their ghost encounters as described, but memory may not accurately reflect what actually occurred during the experience. The memory has been shaped by subsequent interpretation, discussion, and cultural frameworks. Cognitive biases affect how people interpret experiences. Confirmation bias leads people to notice evidence supporting beliefs and ignore evidence against them. If someone believes in ghosts, they will notice and remember experiences that seem to support that belief while dismissing naturalistic explanations. Attribution bias leads people to attribute unexplained events to causes that fit their worldview rather than suspending judgment. Social and cultural factors also shape ghost experiences. People learn from their culture what ghosts are, how they behave, what they look like, and what encounters mean. A person raised in culture with elaborate ghost beliefs will have different ghost experiences than a person raised in skeptical culture. The experiences will conform to cultural expectations. This explains why ghost experiences vary across cultures. Japanese people report seeing yurei with white clothing and no feet. Americans report seeing translucent figures in period clothing. The ghosts conform to cultural expectations about how ghosts should appear. This does not prove ghosts are purely cultural constructs, but it shows culture shapes how experiences are perceived and interpreted. Group dynamics affect ghost experiences. When investigating haunted location in groups, people influence each other. If one person reports seeing something, others become primed to see similar things. Anxiety and excitement spread through groups. What might be ambiguous experience for an individual becomes confirmed ghost sighting when multiple people agree they experienced something. The psychology of testimony explains how sincere witnesses can be wrong. Human perception and memory are fallible. People can be mistaken about what they experienced without being dishonest. Sincere witnesses genuinely believe their accounts are accurate, but sincerity does not guarantee accuracy. This psychological research does not prove ghosts do not exist. It shows that ghost-like experiences can be produced by known psychological and physiological processes. But believers in ghosts argue that while some experiences are explicable by these processes, others are not. They argue that psychology explains how some people mistakenly think they saw ghosts, but does not explain cases where multiple reliable witnesses observe sustained phenomena that resist natural explanation. Skeptics counter that every specific ghost case investigated can be explained by a combination of natural causes, misperception, faulty memory, and occasional fraud. The fact that humans are prone to misperception and false memory is sufficient explanation for all ghost reports. The debate cannot be resolved definitively because it involves interpretation of ambiguous evidence. The same evidence can support either position depending on prior beliefs and how stringently one demands proof. But the psychological research reveals important truth. Regardless of whether ghosts objectively exist, ghost experiences serve important functions. They help people process grief, make sense of ambiguous experiences, maintain connection with the dead, create social cohesion through shared beliefs and experiences, and provide framework for understanding death and what might follow it. These functions explain why ghost beliefs persist. Even if ghosts are entirely psychological constructs, they are useful constructs that serve real human needs. The question of whether ghosts objectively exist may be less important than understanding what ghost beliefs do for people who hold them. Modern neuroscience is beginning to locate specific brain mechanisms involved in ghost experiences. Altered temporal lobe activity, disrupted sense of self, misattribution of internal mental events to external sources, all of these can create experiences of presence, apparitions, and communication with the dead. As neuroscience progresses, more complete neurological account of ghost experiences will emerge. But even complete neurological explanation would not definitively disprove ghosts. Believers could argue that ghosts interact with consciousness at neurological level, and what neuroscience describes is mechanism of interaction rather than proof that ghosts are illusory. The philosophical question of whether ghosts exist independently of brain processes may be ultimately unanswerable. What can be concluded is that ghost beliefs are universal human phenomenon with psychological, cultural, and potentially neurological basis. They persist because they serve functions beyond simply describing objective reality. They help humans deal with death, maintain connection with the dead, make sense of unusual experiences, and create meaning in the face of mortality. These functions ensure that ghosts, whatever their ontological status, will continue to haunt human consciousness. Chapter 14. Conclusion. Why we believe in ghosts. The complete history of ghosts reveals one fundamental truth. Every culture that has ever existed has believed in ghosts. The specific beliefs vary dramatically. The theological frameworks differ. The rituals and practices are diverse, but the core conviction remains constant. Something of the dead persists and sometimes manifests to the living. This universality demands explanation. Why do humans everywhere and always believe in ghosts? The answer lies in how humans experience death and consciousness. We are conscious beings aware of our own existence. We experience ourselves as continuous through time. We have memories, personality, relationships, goals. When someone dies, especially someone we love, the abrupt cessation of their consciousness is incomprehensible. They were here, thinking, feeling, relating. Now they are not. But we cannot fully accept that everything they were simply ceased. Ghost beliefs allow us to bridge this gap. If the dead persist in some form, death is not complete annihilation. If they can sometimes communicate with us, the relationship is not entirely severed. If we might encounter them again, we have not lost them forever. Ghost beliefs make death less absolute and less terrifying. This psychological need is universal because death is universal. Every human who has ever lived has had to process the death of others and contemplate their own mortality. Ghost beliefs are one way humans have made death bearable across cultures and centuries. But ghost beliefs serve additional functions beyond processing death. They reinforce cultural values and moral behavior. In many traditions, how you die and whether you receive proper funeral rites determines whether you become peaceful ancestor or troubled ghost. This encourages people to live well, die properly, and ensure their relatives receive appropriate rituals. Ghost beliefs thus support social cohesion and moral order. Ghost beliefs also maintain connection between past and present. The dead are not forgotten, but remain present through memory, ritual, and sometimes direct manifestation. This gives ancestors ongoing role in community life. It ensures that knowledge, values, and traditions are transmitted across generations. It makes history continuous rather than fragmented. Ghost beliefs provide explanations for otherwise inexplicable phenomena. Strange sounds, unexpected experiences, uncanny coincidences. These can be attributed to ghosts and thus given meaning. Rather than accepting that random meaningless things sometimes happen, Ghost beliefs allow people to interpret ambiguous experiences as meaningful communications from the dead. Ghost beliefs also allow for hope that consciousness continues after death. If ghosts exist, then consciousness is not entirely dependent on the physical body. If the dead can manifest to the living, then something survives death. This suggests that death is not the end, that we might continue in some form, that we might even be reunited with deceased loved ones. This hope is powerful and comforting. The variety of ghost beliefs across cultures reflects different attempts to answer fundamental questions about death, consciousness, and the relationship between living and dead. Do the dead go to another realm or remain near the living? Do they require offerings and rituals, or do they exist independently? Are they dangerous or protective? Are they individual personalities or merged into collective ancestral presence? Every culture answers these questions differently, but every culture asks them. The evidence for ghosts remains ambiguous. After thousands of years of ghost reports, no definitive scientific proof has been produced. Every ghost photograph, recording, or testimony can be explained by natural causes, misperception, or fraud. No ghost has ever been captured, examined, or studied under controlled laboratory conditions. From scientific perspective, there is no compelling evidence that ghosts objectively exist. Yet millions of people report ghost experiences. They see apparitions, hear voices, feel presences, experience phenomena they cannot explain. These experiences are real to those who have them. Dismissing all of them as delusion or fraud seems arrogant and fails to explain why so many people across different cultures and circumstances report similar experiences. Perhaps ghosts exist in psychological and cultural space rather than physical space. They are real as experiences, as beliefs, as cultural constructs, even if they are not real as independent entities. They shape how people understand death, memory, loss, and consciousness. They influence behavior, provide comfort, create meaning. In this sense, ghosts are real regardless of whether they are objectively real. Or perhaps ghosts do exist in some form that science has not yet adequately investigated. Perhaps consciousness does persist after death in ways that occasionally allow manifestation to the living. Perhaps the materialist assumption that consciousness is entirely dependent on brain function is wrong. Perhaps future science will develop frameworks for understanding ghosts that current science lacks. The question cannot be definitively answered, but examining the complete history of ghost beliefs reveals that whether or not ghosts exist, belief in ghosts reflects something fundamental about human psychology and culture. We need to believe in ghosts. We need to maintain connection with the dead. We need to hope that death is not the absolute end. These needs are universal and timeless. Ghost beliefs will continue as long as humans experience death and struggle to understand consciousness. The specific forms will change as cultures evolve. Modern ghosts differ from medieval ghosts, which differ from ancient Mesopotamian ghosts. But the core belief that something of the dead persists will remain. We tell ghost stories to entertain ourselves, to frighten ourselves, to process grief, to maintain traditions, to explore the unknown. We investigate hauntings to test the boundaries of reality, to seek evidence of survival, to understand consciousness. We believe in ghosts because we are human, and humans have always believed in ghosts. The Atlas of Ghosts is complete. We have documented ghost beliefs from ancient Mesopotamia to modern America, from Shinto Japan to Catholic Europe, from African ancestor traditions to Islamic jinn, from Hindu and Buddhist spirit realms to Native American spiritual worlds. We have examined medieval theology, Victorian spiritualism, and modern parapsychology. We have explored the psychology of ghost experiences and the cultural functions of ghost beliefs. What have we learned? that ghosts are universal, that they take countless forms, that they serve important functions, that they reflect how humans understand death, consciousness, memory, and meaning, that they resist simple explanation, that they will persist as long as humans exist. The dead do not always rest. Whether this is because ghosts objectively exist or because the living cannot let go of the dead is ultimately unclear. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps the distinction is meaningless. What matters is that ghosts haunt us still, as they have haunted humans across all cultures and all times. This is the complete history of ghosts, the atlas of the invisible, the documentation of humanity's oldest belief. The dead live on in our memories, in our beliefs, in our experiences, and perhaps in reality beyond our understanding. May we remember them. May we honor them. May we understand that death, whatever it is not the end of the story. The atlas closes, but the ghosts remain.